There's something about the ocean at night that calls to us, isn't there? That vast, dark expanse where mysteries drift like forgotten dreams, where sleep stories begin not with fairy tales, but with real events so strange they challenge everything we think we know about our world. Tonight, we're diving deeper than most dare to venture, into the heart of the ocean's most bewildering enigmas. These aren't just tales to help you sleep. They're true deep-sea mysteries that have haunted sailors, scientists, and storytellers for generations. Stories of ships that vanished without explanation, of creatures so alien they seem to belong to another planet entirely, and of discoveries so profound they've rewritten our understanding of what lies beneath the waves. From the bone-chilling depths where pressure could crush a human instantly, to the twilight zones where bioluminescent beings dance in eternal darkness, we'll explore mysteries that make the imagination run wild. These ocean mysteries aren't just stories. They're invitations to wonder, to question, and perhaps to drift off into dreams filled with the impossible made real. So before we descend into these mysterious depths together, take a moment to settle in somewhere comfortable. Maybe dim those lights, grab your favorite blanket, and let the gentle rhythm of these sleep stories carry you away. And if you're feeling brave enough to join our midnight expedition into the abyss, drop a comment and tell me, are you listening from your bedroom, your living room, or perhaps somewhere even more adventurous? I love knowing where our fellow deep-sea explorers are gathering from around the world. Now, let's ease into tonight's journey. Close your eyes if you'd like, and imagine yourself floating gently above an ocean so vast and deep that its secrets have remained hidden for millennia. Tonight, we unlock just a few of those secrets, one mystery at a time. Our first story takes us to the Great Lakes, where even inland waters hold mysteries as deep as any ocean. Story 1. The Ghost of Lake Superior. The legend of the SS Edmund Fitzgerald begins not in the vast expanse of an ocean, but in the deceptively calm waters of Lake Superior, a body of water so immense that early explorers mistook it for a sea. It's November 10th, 1975, and the stage is set for one of the most haunting maritime mysteries in American history. Picture the Edmund Fitzgerald as she was that fateful morning, a colossal 729-foot freighter, longer than 2 football fields, cutting through the dark waters of Lake Superior with the confidence of a vessel that had weathered countless storms. For 17 years, she had been the pride of the Great Lakes fleet, earning the nickname the Titanic of the Great Lakes, though no one could have imagined how prophetic that comparison would prove to be. Captain Ernest McSorley stood on the bridge that morning, a seasoned mariner with 44 years of experience navigating these inland seas. The Fitzgerald was loaded with 26,000 tons of iron ore pellets, bound for Detroit, a routine cargo run that had been completed thousands of times before. The crew of 29 men had no reason to expect this journey would be any different from the countless others that had come before. But Lake Superior is not called Gitchagummy, the big water, without reason. Native Americans had long respected its power, warning of its sudden storms and mysterious depths. As the Fitzgerald made her way east, weather reports began to paint an ominous picture. A massive storm system was building, promising winds that could reach 70 miles per hour and waves that would tower like moving mountains. The Arthur M. Anderson, a sister ship following roughly 10 miles behind, maintained radio contact with the Fitzgerald as both vessels pushed through increasingly violent conditions. By early afternoon, the winds were howling like banshees across the lake's surface, whipping the water into a frenzy of foam and fury. Waves began to build, not the gentle swells of a typical storm, but the infamous Three Sisters of Lake Superior, 3 massive waves that roll in sequence, each one higher and more devastating than the last. At 3:30 p.m., Captain McSorley radioed the Anderson with a report that would chill maritime experts for decades to come. The Fitzgerald had sustained damage, she was taking on water, and had developed a dangerous list. 2 of her massive ballast tanks had been breached, and the ship's pumps were working overtime to keep her afloat. Most telling of all, the ship had lost both of her radar systems, leaving her essentially blind in the storm. Captain Cooper of the Anderson offered to provide navigational assistance, guiding the damaged Fitzgerald toward the safety of Whitefish Bay. For the next several hours, the 2 ships battled through seas that defied description, waves reaching heights of 35 feet, winds screaming across the water at sustained speeds that made normal radio communication nearly impossible. The last radio transmission from the Edmund Fitzgerald, came at 7:10 p.m. Captain McSorley's voice crackled through the static, answering a routine check-in from the Anderson. "We are holding our own." Those 4 words would become some of the most haunting in maritime history, because moments later, the Edmund Fitzgerald simply disappeared. Not gradually, not slowly slipping beneath the waves with distress calls and desperate mayday signals. The massive freighter, with all 29 souls aboard, vanished from radar screens as completely as if she had been erased from existence. When the Anderson's crew looked back through the storm-lashed darkness, expecting to see the comforting glow of the Fitzgerald's lights, there was nothing but empty water and the howling wind. The search that followed was immediate and desperate. Coast Guard helicopters battled hurricane-force winds to scour the area where the Fitzgerald had last been seen. Ships converged from across the Great Lakes, their crews scanning the waters for any sign of survivors, debris, or hope. But Lake Superior had swallowed the great ship whole, leaving behind only questions and a few scattered pieces of wreckage that told a story no one wanted to believe. When the wreck was finally located 3 days later, lying in 530 feet of dark, cold water just 17 miles from the safety of Whitefish Bay, the scene that greeted investigators was both haunting and baffling. The Edmund Fitzgerald had been torn in two, her massive hull broken like a child's toy. The bow section sat upright on the bottom, as if the ship had simply driven herself into the lake bed. The stern section lay inverted, twisted, and mangled 170 feet away from the bow. Most mysteriously of all, the ship's lifeboats remained secured to their davits, unused and undamaged. This detail would haunt investigators for years to come. How could a crew of experienced sailors, facing certain death, fail to launch even a single lifeboat? The evidence suggested that whatever had claimed the Edmund Fitzgerald had happened so quickly that there had been no time for emergency procedures, no time for distress calls, no time for the most basic survival responses. The official investigation would point to a combination of factors: the massive waves, the ship's damaged condition, and possibly the phenomenon of shoaling, where the ship's hull might have struck the rocky bottom in the shallows near Caribou Island. But these explanations, while logical, couldn't fully account for the sudden, complete disappearance of such a massive vessel. Over the years, other theories have emerged from the depths of Lake Superior, like ghostly whispers. Some point to structural failure, the possibility that the ship's hull, weakened by years of heavy loading and the stress of countless storms, simply gave way under the enormous pressure of the November gale. Others suggest that the Fitzgerald was overwhelmed by a rogue wave, a wall of water so massive and unexpected that it crushed the ship like an empty aluminum can. Perhaps the most chilling theory involves the three sisters themselves, those legendary sequences of waves that Lake Superior is famous for. According to this scenario, the Fitzgerald, already damaged and riding low in the water, was struck by the first wave, which flooded her decks. The second wave, arriving before the ship could recover, pushed her even lower. And the third wave, the largest and most devastating, drove the great ship beneath the surface in a matter of seconds. The mystery of the Edmund Fitzgerald has inspired countless investigations, documentaries, and even a haunting ballad by Gordon Lightfoot that immortalized the tragedy in American folklore. In 1995, 20 years after the sinking, the ship's bronze bell was recovered from the wreck and replaced with a replica bearing the names of all 29 crew members who perished that November night. But perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the Edmund Fitzgerald mystery isn't what we know about her final moments, it's what we don't know. How could an experienced captain, sailing familiar waters with modern equipment and decades of training, find himself so quickly overwhelmed that there was no time even to call for help? What really happened in those final minutes as the storm raged and the great ship fought her last battle against the fury of Lake Superior? The wreck remains on the bottom of the lake, protected by law as a maritime gravesite, its secrets held tight in the dark, cold waters that claimed it. Sometimes, on quiet nights when the lake is calm and peaceful, local residents claim they can still hear the echo of that final radio transmission drifting across the water. We are holding our own. But Lake Superior knows the truth, and like all great bodies of water, it keeps its secrets well. The Edmund Fitzgerald has become more than just a shipwreck. She's become a reminder that even in our modern age, even with all our technology and expertise, the forces of nature can still reach out and claim what they will, leaving behind only questions that echo in the darkness like the waves themselves. As we drift away from the cold depths of Lake Superior, We carry with us the haunting image of a great ship lying broken on the bottom, her crew forever part of the lake they sought to conquer. But the mysteries of the deep are far from over, and our next story takes us from the inland seas to the vast expanse of the North Atlantic, where another legend lies waiting in the darkness. Story 2. The Digital Ghost of the North Atlantic. In the spring of 2024, something extraordinary happened in the depths of the North Atlantic Ocean. Something that would forever change how we see one of history's most famous tragedies. 2.5 miles beneath the surface, where eternal darkness reigns and pressure could crush a human body in an instant, advanced technology was about to resurrect a ghost. The RMS Titanic has rested on the ocean floor for over a century, her broken hull slowly surrendering to the relentless forces of decay and time. Since her discovery in 1985, countless expeditions have visited the wreck, but nothing could have prepared the maritime world for what was about to emerge from the abyss. A perfect digital twin of the doomed luxury liner, reconstructed from 750,000 photographs with such stunning detail that it seemed to bring the dead ship back to life. Picture the scene as teams of researchers prepared for this unprecedented deep-sea expedition. Using the most advanced remotely operated vehicles ever deployed, they would spend weeks methodically photographing every inch of the wreck site. 715,000 images captured at a depth of 12,500 feet in waters so dark that artificial lights were the only thing standing between the cameras and absolute blackness. The resulting digital model would reveal secrets that had been hidden for over a century, details so precise that you could almost hear the ghost of the ship's orchestra playing "Nearer, My God, to Thee" as the virtual Titanic took shape on computer screens around the world. What emerged from this technological marvel was breathtaking and deeply unsettling in equal measure. The digital Titanic appeared as a haunting monument to human ambition and natural fury, her massive hull split in two, with the bow and stern sections separated by nearly a third of a mile of debris-strewn ocean floor. The bow section sat upright, almost noble in its final resting place, while the stern told a different story, twisted and mangled, bearing witness to the violence of that April night in 1912. The level of detail captured in this digital resurrection was extraordinary. Individual rivets could be seen along the hull, their metal heads still visible after more than a century underwater. The ship's iconic grand staircase, once the crown jewel of first-class luxury, now appeared as a gaping void. The ornate dome and elaborate woodwork had long since been consumed by the ocean or collapsed into the depths below. But it was the smaller details that proved most haunting. Scattered across the ocean floor like breadcrumbs from a fairy tale turned nightmare, thousands of artifacts told the story of the Titanic's final moments. China plates, some still bearing the White Star Line logo, lay partially buried in the sediment. A bronze cherub statue, once part of the ship's elegant decor, stared sightlessly up through the water. Champagne bottles, their contents long since claimed by the sea, rested among the debris like silent witnesses to interrupted celebrations. The digital model revealed something that had puzzled investigators for decades: the almost complete absence of the ship's crow's nest. This critical piece of equipment, where lookouts Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee had spotted the iceberg too late to prevent disaster, had simply vanished. Had it been destroyed in the sinking? Or had it been claimed by one of the many expeditions that had visited the wreck over the years? The mystery added another layer to the Titanic's already complex story. Perhaps most disturbing of all were the signs of accelerating decay captured in these images. The famous rusticles, icicle-like formations of rust created by iron-eating bacteria, hung from the ship's superstructure like underwater stalactites, growing longer and more numerous with each passing year. Scientists estimate that these microorganisms are slowly consuming the great ship, and that within 50 to 100 years, the Titanic may collapse entirely, leaving only a rust stain on the ocean floor to mark where she once lay. The digital twin also revealed details about the ship's final moments that had never been seen before. Deck railings were bent and twisted, showing the tremendous forces at work as the ship broke apart. Portholes gaped like empty eye sockets, their glass long since shattered by pressure and time. The ship's massive propellers, still attached to the stern section, stood as bronze monuments to the power that had once driven this floating palace across the Atlantic. But the most poignant discoveries were personal. Among the debris field, the digital cameras captured images of passengers' belongings. a leather suitcase, its contents scattered and decayed, a pair of boots still standing as if their owner had just stepped out of them, a porcelain doll's head staring up through the darkness with an expression frozen in time. These artifacts served as powerful reminders that the Titanic was more than just a ship. It was a floating city carrying the hopes, dreams, and possessions of over 2,200 people. The digital model allowed researchers to catalog these items with unprecedented precision, creating a virtual museum of one of history's most tragic nights. The technology that made this digital resurrection possible represents a revolution in deep-sea exploration. By combining artificial intelligence with advanced photogrammetry, researchers created a three-dimensional model so accurate that marine archaeologists could examine details that would have been impossible to see during a traditional manned dive. The model could be rotated, zoomed, and explored from every angle, allowing investigators to study the wreck site as if they were walking through it in person. Yet for all its technological sophistication, the digital Titanic raises profound ethical questions about our relationship with maritime graves. Should such sites be left in peace, or do we have a responsibility to preserve them for future generations? The wreck is slowly disappearing, consumed by bacteria and corroded by time. Soon, these digital models may be all that remains of the physical ship. The project also revealed how much the wreck site has changed since its discovery nearly 40 years ago. Comparing the new images with earlier photographs, researchers could see clear evidence of deterioration. Sections of the ship that were intact in the 1980s have since collapsed. The bridge, where Captain Edward Smith spent his final hours, has been reduced to twisted metal and scattered debris. Perhaps most haunting of all, the digital model captured the Titanic at what may be a crucial moment in its decay. The ship's structure is becoming increasingly unstable, and some experts believe that future expeditions may find only a collapsed ruin where the bow section now stands upright. In this sense, the digital twin becomes not just a technological achievement, but a race against time, an effort to preserve one of history's most significant shipwrecks before it's lost forever. As we contemplate this digital ghost ship floating through virtual space, we're reminded that even in death, the Titanic continues to captivate our imagination. The ship that was supposed to be unsinkable has become, in its afterlife, something truly imperishable, a perfect digital monument to human ambition, tragedy, and the relentless passage of time. But our deep-sea mysteries are far from over. As we leave the haunting beauty of the digital Titanic behind, our journey takes us to warmer waters, where an entirely different kind of mystery was about to emerge from the depths, something so strange and unexplained that it would challenge everything scientists thought they knew about life in the ocean's deepest places. Story 3. The Phantom Finger of the Abyss. There are moments in deep-sea exploration when even the most experienced researchers find themselves staring at their screens in complete bewilderment, unable to process what they're seeing. Such a moment occurred in 2024, when the crew aboard NOAA's Ocean Explorer vessel encountered something so bizarre, so utterly inexplicable, that it would leave marine scientists around the world scratching their heads and questioning everything they thought they knew about life in the deep ocean. The discovery happened during what should have been a routine mapping expedition off the southern coast of Alaska. The team was conducting a systematic survey of the seafloor at a depth of 3,000 feet, in waters so remote and unexplored that they might as well have been mapping the surface of an alien planet. The remotely operated vehicle descended through layers of increasingly dark water, its powerful lights cutting through the abyss like a knife through black velvet. At first, everything appeared normal. The seafloor spread out below like a vast, barren desert, a seemingly lifeless expanse of sediment and scattered rocks that had remained undisturbed for countless millennia. The ROV's cameras swept back and forth methodically, documenting the terrain for future study, when suddenly something appeared in the frame that made the entire control room fall silent. Rising from the ocean floor like a ghostly finger pointing toward the surface was what the team would later describe as a noodly line, a translucent, otherworldly structure that defied every category of known deep-sea phenomena. It wasn't quite biological, yet it moved with an organic fluidity that suggested life. It wasn't geological, yet it rose from the seafloor with the permanence of a natural formation. It was something entirely outside the realm of scientific understanding. The structure itself was mesmerizing to watch, roughly the width of a human arm but impossibly long, It swayed gently in the deep ocean currents, like an underwater reed bending in an invisible wind. Its surface appeared almost glass-like, translucent enough that the ROV's lights seemed to pass through it, creating an ethereal glow that made the entire formation appear to be lit from within. What made the discovery even more unnerving was its apparent solidity. This wasn't some trick of light or shadow, no optical illusion created by the interplay of artificial illumination and eternal darkness. The noodly line cast its own shadow on the seafloor, proving its physical presence, yet its composition remained a complete mystery. The ROV's instruments detected its presence, but couldn't determine what it was made of. The team observed the structure for hours, documenting its every movement and characteristic. The noodly line seemed to pulse rhythmically, expanding and contracting in a pattern that suggested either respiration or some kind of internal fluid circulation. Occasionally, it would bend at seemingly impossible angles, folding over on itself before slowly straightening again, as if testing its own flexibility. Perhaps most disturbing of all was the structure's apparent awareness of the ROV's presence. As the underwater vehicle circled the formation, taking photographs from every angle, the noodly line seemed to track its movement, turning and swaying in ways that suggested it was somehow observing its mechanical visitor. The idea that this deep-sea phantom might possess some form of consciousness was both fascinating and deeply unsettling. The scientific team aboard the Okeanos Explorer found themselves faced with an unprecedented challenge. They had discovered something that didn't fit into any existing category of marine biology, geology, or oceanography. They had no protocol for investigating something that appeared to be alive yet displayed characteristics unlike any known life form. They had no reference point for understanding a structure that seemed to exist at the boundary between the organic and the inorganic. Initial speculation ran wild among the crew. Some suggested it might be a previously unknown type of deep-sea organism, perhaps a massive single-celled creature, or a colonial organism like a siphonophore, but unlike any ever documented. Others theorized it could be some kind of geological formation, possibly related to hydrothermal vent activity or underwater volcanic processes, though no vents were detected in the area. The more exotic theories were whispered, rather than spoken aloud. Could this be evidence of some form of deep-sea intelligence? Was it possible that the extreme environment of the deep ocean had given rise to life forms so alien that they bore no resemblance to anything in our surface-dwelling experience? The noodly line's apparent responsiveness to the ROV's presence lent credence to these more outlandish possibilities. As word of the discovery spread through the scientific community, researchers around the world began proposing their own explanations. Marine biologists suggested it might be a new type of deep-sea coral or sponge, evolved to take advantage of deep ocean currents in ways never before observed. Geologists proposed it could be a rare mineral formation, perhaps created by chemical processes unique to the extreme pressure and temperature conditions of the deep seafloor. Microbiologists raised the intriguing possibility that the noodly line might be a macroscopic manifestation of microbial activity, a vast bacterial or archaeal formation that had somehow organized itself into this impossible structure. The deep ocean is home to countless microorganisms that thrive in conditions that would be instantly lethal to surface life, and it's entirely possible that some of these microscopic beings might collaborate to create structures visible to the naked eye. The discovery also sparked discussions about the fundamental nature of life itself. If the noodly line proved to be biological, it would represent a form of life so radically different from anything previously known that it might force scientists to reconsider their basic definitions of what it means to be alive. The structure displayed movement, apparent responsiveness, and what seemed to be organized behavior, yet it bore no resemblance to any known kingdom of life. Unfortunately, the remote location and extreme depth of the discovery made detailed study nearly impossible. The team aboard the Okeanos Explorer had only a limited window of time to observe the structure before their mission required them to move on to other areas. No samples could be collected without risking damage to what might be a unique and irreplaceable organism, and the harsh conditions at 3,000 feet depth made extended observation challenging even with the most advanced equipment. The noodly line was documented in high-definition video and thousands of still photographs, but these images only deepened the mystery rather than solving it. Each new angle revealed additional puzzling characteristics: the way light seemed to bend around the structure, the impossibly smooth texture of its surface. the hypnotic rhythm of its movements that seemed almost musical in their regularity. Social media exploded with theories and speculation when images of the discovery were released to the public. Armchair scientists and conspiracy theorists alike offered explanations ranging from the plausible to the wildly imaginative. Some suggested it was evidence of alien life, while others proposed it might be related to secret military experiments or unknown geological processes. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the Noodly Line discovery is what it represents about the state of our knowledge of the deep ocean. In an age when we can map distant galaxies and decode the human genome, the fact that something so fundamentally mysterious can still emerge from our own planet's depths is both humbling and thrilling. It serves as a reminder that Earth itself remains largely unexplored, with vast regions of the ocean floor that have never been visited by human eyes or instruments. The Noodly Line of Alaska has joined the ranks of the great deep-sea mysteries, those tantalizing discoveries that challenge our understanding and fire our imagination. Whether it proves to be a new form of life, a unique geological phenomenon, or something else entirely, it represents the endless capacity of the ocean to surprise us. As we drift away from the ghostly finger reaching up from the Alaskan depths, we carry with us the unsettling knowledge that our planet still holds secrets we can barely imagine. The deep ocean remains the final frontier, a realm where the impossible becomes possible and where every dive might reveal something that changes our understanding of life itself. But our journey into the mysterious depths is far from over. From the ethereal beauty of Alaska's phantom finger, we now descend even deeper into the crushing darkness of the ocean trenches, where creatures so alien they seem to belong to another world entirely dance in the eternal night. Story 4. The Dancing Phantom of the Tonga Trench. In the deepest places of our ocean, where the weight of water above could crush a submarine like an empty soda can, there exists a realm so alien that even seasoned marine biologists struggle to comprehend what they're seeing. It's a world where evolution has taken paths so strange and wonderful that every new discovery feels like first contact with life from another planet entirely. Such was the case when researchers exploring the Tonga Trench, one of the deepest places on Earth, encountered a creature so otherworldly that it seemed to float through the water like a living ghost. At a crushing depth of 3,281 feet, where sunlight has never penetrated, and the pressure is more than 100 times greater than at the surface, their cameras captured something that would haunt the dreams of everyone who witnessed it. The whip-lash squid appeared on their screens like a vision from a fever dream. Its scientific name, Mastigoteuthis, means whip-bearer, and one look at the creature explains why. Where most squids have 8 relatively normal arms and 2 longer feeding tentacles, the whip-lash squid has evolved something far more extraordinary. Appendages so long and thin, they appear almost ethereal, drifting behind the creature like the trailing silk of an underwater ballet dancer. Picture this phantom as it moves through the absolute darkness of the deep ocean. Its body, no larger than a human fist, glows with a soft bioluminescent light that pulses in rhythms only it understands. But it's those incredible arms that capture the imagination, thread-like extensions that can stretch to lengths of several feet, undulating through the water with a hypnotic grace that seems to defy the harsh realities of life in the abyss. The creature's discovery in the Tonga Trench was captured during a deep-sea expedition in the early 2000s, when remotely operated vehicles were just beginning to reveal the secrets of the Hadal Zone, those deepest parts of the ocean where life exists under conditions so extreme. They challenge our very understanding of what's possible. The ROV's lights, cutting through water that had been dark since the formation of the Earth itself, illuminated this dancing specter in a moment that felt more like encountering magic than conducting science. What makes the whip-lash squid truly extraordinary isn't just its appearance, but the mystery of how it survives in one of the most hostile environments on our planet. At depths approaching the bottom of the Tonga Trench, the pressure is so intense that it would instantly compress air-filled spaces, yet somehow this delicate creature thrives here, its tissues perfectly adapted to exist in conditions that would be instantly lethal to most life forms. The squid's hunting strategy is as alien as its appearance. Those impossibly long, thin arms aren't just for show, they're sophisticated hunting tools that the creature uses in ways that marine biologists are only beginning to understand. Unlike the powerful, grasping tentacles of shallow-water squids that rely on strength and speed to capture prey, the whip-lash squid's arms move with an almost hypnotic rhythm, creating currents and vibrations in the water that may serve to confuse, disorient, or attract its prey. Watching the creature hunt is like witnessing an underwater dance performance choreographed by evolution itself. The squid's arms move independently of each other, creating complex patterns in the water that serve purposes we can only guess at. Some researchers believe these movements may generate small electrical fields that help the squid navigate in the complete darkness of the deep, while others suggest they might be using their arms to create a kind of sensory web that can detect the slightest movement of potential prey. The bioluminescence displayed by the whip-lash squid adds another layer of mystery to its already enigmatic existence. The creature's body pulses with light and patterns that seem almost communicative, though with what or whom remains unknown. In the vast emptiness of the deep ocean, encounters between individuals of the same species are incredibly rare, making the purpose of these light displays a fascinating puzzle for researchers. Some theories suggest that the bioluminescent patterns serve as a form of camouflage, breaking up the squid's silhouette against the faint light that filters down from far above. Others propose that the lights might be used to startle or confuse predators, creating a momentary distraction that allows the squid to escape into the darkness. Most intriguingly, the light patterns might serve as a form of long-distance communication, sending signals across the vast emptiness of the deep ocean to others of its kind. The whip-lash squid's diet remains largely mysterious, as does almost every aspect of its life cycle. Researchers have found evidence that these creatures feed on small crustaceans, fish larvae, and other small organisms that drift down from the more populated waters above. But how they catch such prey with their seemingly delicate arms, and how they process their food in an environment where every calorie must be carefully conserved, remains an open question. The creature's reproductive habits are equally enigmatic. Like many deep-sea animals, whip-lash squids are thought to have extended lifespans and slow reproductive cycles, adaptations that help them survive in an environment where food is scarce and encounters with potential mates are vanishingly rare. Some researchers speculate that the creatures might be capable of reproducing asexually under certain conditions, though this remains unproven. What we do know is that the whip-lash squid represents just one example of the incredible adaptations that evolution has produced in the deep ocean. Every aspect of its anatomy, from its elongated arms to its specialized light-producing organs, represents millions of years of adaptation to one of the most challenging environments on Earth. The creature is a living testament to life's incredible ability to find a way to survive and thrive even in the most unlikely places. The discovery of the whip-lash squid in the Tonga Trench also highlighted how little we truly know about life in the deepest parts of our ocean. Despite decades of exploration, scientists estimate that we may have discovered less than 1% of the species that live in the deep sea. Each new expedition reveals creatures so strange and wonderful that they challenge our understanding of what life can be. The footage of the whip-lash squid captured during that expedition has become something of a legend among marine biologists and deep-sea enthusiasts. The ethereal quality of the creature's movements, combined with the alien landscape of the deep ocean floor, creates an image that seems to belong more to science fiction than to scientific documentation. Yet there it is, real and undeniable, a reminder that our own planet still holds mysteries that can take our breath away. The creature's common name, whip-lash squid, fails to capture the otherworldly beauty of its movements through the water. To watch it swim is to see something that seems to exist outside the normal laws of physics, its arms trailing behind it like liquid starlight, pulsing with bioluminescent rhythms that speak a language we're only beginning to learn to understand. As researchers continue to explore the deepest parts of our ocean, discoveries like the whip-lash squid serve as powerful reminders of how much we still have to learn about our own planet. These creatures have been evolving in isolation for millions of years, developing adaptations and behaviors that we're only now beginning to document and understand. The whip-lash squid of the Tonga Trench remains one of the most hauntingly beautiful examples of deep-sea life ever captured on film. Its ghostly dance through the crushing darkness of the abyss serves as a perfect metaphor for the mystery and wonder that still await discovery in the deepest parts of our world. As we drift away from the ethereal dance of the whip-lash squid, we carry with us the image of those impossibly long arms, trailing through the darkness like silk scarves in an underwater breeze. But our journey into the mysteries of the deep is far from over, and our next story takes us from the alien world of the living to the equally mysterious realm of the lost, where human ambition met the unforgiving power of the polar seas. Story 5. The Ship That Time Forgot. In the vast ice-locked wilderness of Antarctica, where the very air can freeze the moisture in your lungs, and the landscape stretches endlessly white in every direction, there lies beneath the waters of the Weddell Sea one of the most perfectly preserved time capsules ever discovered. For 107 years, it waited in the crushing darkness of the deep ocean, its wood still bearing the scars of its final battle, its nameplate still legible, despite more than a century of submersion in the most hostile waters on Earth. This is the story of the Endurance, Ernest Shackleton's ship, and perhaps the most remarkable example of preservation that the deep ocean has ever yielded. When the ship was finally located in March 2022, nearly 10,000 feet beneath the surface of the Weddell Sea, the discovery sent shockwaves through the archaeological and maritime communities. Here was a vessel that looked as though it had sunk yesterday, not more than a century ago. The Endurance's story begins in an age when the Earth still held vast blank spaces on its maps, when the poles represented the ultimate challenge for human exploration, and when men dreamed of being the first to set foot on untouched land. Ernest Shackleton, already a veteran of Antarctic exploration, conceived what he called the Imperial Transantarctic Expedition, an ambitious plan to cross the entire Antarctic continent from sea to sea, a journey that had never been attempted. In August 1914, just as the world was sliding into the catastrophe of World War I, Shackleton and his crew of 27 men set sail from England aboard the Endurance, a three-masted barquentine specially built for polar exploration. The ship was constructed of thick Norwegian fir and reinforced with steel to withstand the crushing pressure of polar ice. She was designed to be trapped by ice if necessary, her hull strong enough to resist being crushed even if locked in the pack ice for months. The irony of her fate would not be lost on history. By January 1915, the Endurance had reached the Weddell Sea, but already the expedition was facing challenges that Shackleton had not anticipated. The Antarctic summer of 1914 to 1915 was unusually severe, with pack ice extending much farther north than normal. What should have been open water was instead a maze of ice floes, pressure ridges, and channels that opened and closed without warning. On January 19, 1915, the Endurance became trapped in the pack ice, locked in place by forces beyond human control. Shackleton and his men settled in for what they hoped would be a temporary imprisonment, confident that the spring thaw would free their ship and allow them to continue their expedition. They had no way of knowing that they would never again feel the Endurance move freely through open water. For the next 10 months, the ship became a floating base camp, drifting helplessly with the pack ice as the frozen mass moved slowly across the Weddell Sea. The men maintained their routines, conducted scientific observations, and even played football on the ice around their trapped vessel. But beneath them, invisible and inexorable, the ice was building pressure. The forces involved are almost impossible to comprehend. As the pack ice moved, massive floes weighing millions of tons pressed against each other, creating pressure ridges that could tower 30 feet above the surface. When these titanic forces focused on the hull of the Endurance, even her specially reinforced construction was no match for the slowly building pressure. Throughout the Antarctic winter of 1915, the men could hear their ship dying around them. The hull creaked and groaned as the ice pressed against it, a constant reminder of the tremendous forces at work. Gradually, the pressure began to win. Planks started to spring, seams opened, and water began to enter the hull faster than the pumps could remove it. On October 27, 1915, Shackleton made the decision that would save his men's lives and seal his ship's fate. The Endurance was abandoned. The crew salvaged what they could, food, equipment, the ship's boats, and established a camp on the ice nearby. For the next month, they watched helplessly as their ship was slowly crushed by the inexorable pressure of the ice pack. The final moments of the Endurance were witnessed and documented by expedition photographer Frank Hurley, whose haunting images would later become some of the most famous photographs in the history of exploration. The ship's masts snapped like twigs, her hull timbers groaned and splintered, and finally, on November 21, 1915, the Endurance slipped beneath the ice and disappeared into the dark waters of the Weddell Sea. What followed was one of the most extraordinary survival stories in human history. Stranded on the shifting ice with no ship and no way to communicate with the outside world, Shackleton led his men through nearly 2 years of unimaginable hardship. They survived on the ice for months, eventually reaching Elephant Island in their small boats before Shackleton made his legendary 800-mile journey to South Georgia Island to organize a rescue. Remarkably, Every single member of the expedition survived. For more than a century, the Endurance lay on the bottom of the Weddell Sea, her location unknown and her condition a matter of speculation. The extreme cold and lack of wood-eating organisms in Antarctic waters suggested that the ship might be well preserved, but nobody could have imagined just how perfectly she had been maintained by the deep, cold waters of the Southern Ocean. The search for the Endurance began in earnest in 2019, when the Weddell Sea expedition used historical records, including the ship's navigational logs and the detailed observations of expedition captain Frank Worsley, to narrow down the search area. The challenge was immense. The Weddell Sea is one of the most remote and ice-covered bodies of water on Earth, accessible only during the brief Antarctic summer, and even then only with the most advanced ice-breaking vessels. The breakthrough came during the Endurance 22 expedition in March 2022. Using state-of-the-art search vehicles and underwater mapping technology, the team located the wreck at a depth of 10,013 feet, just 4 miles south of the position originally calculated by the ship's captain using celestial navigation, a testament to the remarkable navigational skills of early 20th century mariners. What the cameras revealed when they finally reached the wreck was nothing short of miraculous. The Endurance sat upright on the seafloor, her 3 masts still standing, her rigging still largely intact. The ship's wheel stood ready for the next watch, and her nameplate, Endurance London, was clearly visible across the stern, the letters as crisp and readable as the day they were painted. The preservation was so complete that individual planks could be counted, and the damage from the ice that crushed her was clearly visible along her hull. The pressure that finally claimed the ship had split her port side, and sections of her deck had collapsed, but the overall structure remained remarkably intact. It was as if the Endurance had been placed in a vast, cold museum, protected from decay by the unique conditions of the Antarctic deep. Perhaps most remarkably, the wreck site had become a thriving ecosystem. Despite the crushing depth and near-freezing temperatures, the ship had been colonized by Antarctic marine life. Sea stars clung to her rigging, and delicate sea anemones had made their homes among her timbers. The Endurance had become an artificial reef, providing habitat for creatures that live in one of the most extreme environments on Earth. The Discovery team spent weeks documenting every detail of the wreck, using high-definition cameras and 3-dimensional mapping technology to create a complete digital record of the ship. In keeping with the Antarctic Treaty, nothing was removed from the wreck site. The Endurance was designated as a historic site and monument, protected for future generations to study and admire. The images and video footage from the wreck revealed countless details that brought the ship's final days to life. Sections of rigging lay exactly where they had fallen when the mast came down. Personal items belonging to the crew were visible in the debris around the ship. Even the ship's cat, named Mrs. Chippy, seemed to live on in the form of a carved wooden figure that had somehow survived the crushing and the century underwater. The discovery of the Endurance represents more than just an archaeological triumph. It's a direct connection to one of the most remarkable stories of human endurance and leadership ever recorded. The ship serves as a tangible link to Shackleton's extraordinary expedition and to an age when the world was still full of unknowns waiting to be explored. The pristine condition of the wreck also offers unique insights into early 20th century shipbuilding and polar exploration techniques. Every detail of the ship's construction is preserved, from the way her hull was reinforced against ice pressure to the ingenious solutions her builders devised for surviving in polar conditions. The Endurance has become a time capsule that allows us to examine these historical details with a precision that would be impossible with any other source. As we contemplate the Endurance resting peacefully on the bottom of the Weddell Sea, we're reminded of the extraordinary power of the deep ocean to preserve the past. In the crushing darkness and bone-chilling cold of the Antarctic depths, time seems to move differently. The ship that was crushed by ice more than a century ago now rests as a monument to human ambition, courage, and the eternal human drive to explore the unknown. The Endurance's story continues even now, as researchers use the detailed documentation of the wreck to learn more about both the ship and the expedition that made her famous. Advanced imaging techniques are revealing new details about her construction and her final moments, while the thriving ecosystem that has developed around her wreck provides insights into life in the Antarctic deep. As we drift away from the perfectly preserved ghost ship resting in her icy grave, we carry with us the image of those 3 masts still standing proud against the current, and the nameplate that proclaims her identity to the eternal darkness of the deep. The endurance endures, a testament to both human dreams and the ocean's power to preserve them. But the deep ocean holds more than just monuments to human endeavor. Our next story takes us from the realm of the historically significant to the world of the utterly mysterious, where modern technology has revealed creatures so alien they challenge our very understanding of what life can be. Story 6. The Living Jewel of the Abyss. In the deepest reaches of the Pacific Ocean, where the crushing pressure would instantly destroy any surface dweller, and the darkness is so complete that evolution has rendered eyes useless, there exists a realm of beauty so alien and wonderful that it challenges everything we think we know about life itself. It's a world where creatures have evolved to create their own light, their own warmth, their own rules for survival, and sometimes their own impossible beauty. Such was the revelation that awaited researchers in 2024 when the Schmidt Ocean Institute's remotely operated vehicle descended to the staggering depth of 14,760 feet in the Pacific Ocean, at pressures more than 400 times greater than at sea level, in waters so cold they hover just above freezing. Their cameras captured something that would leave marine biologists around the world speechless with wonder. Floating through the eternal night like a living constellation was what the team initially called simply the mystery mollusk, a creature so ethereal, so impossibly beautiful, that it seemed to belong more to the realm of fantasy than to scientific documentation. The organism pulsed with its own internal light, its translucent body glowing with colors that had no names, moving through the water with a grace that seemed to defy the harsh realities of existence in the deep ocean. At first glance, the creature appeared to be something from another world entirely. Its body was almost completely transparent, allowing the remotely operated vehicle's lights to pass through it and reveal internal structures that pulsed and flowed like liquid starlight. Delicate, finger-like projections extended from its body, structures that marine biologists would later identify as cerata, specialized organs that serve multiple functions in these deep-sea dwellers. What made this discovery particularly extraordinary was not just the creature's otherworldly beauty, but the depth at which it was found. Most known nudibranchs, the family of sea slugs to which this creature belongs, are found in much shallower waters, typically less than a few hundred feet deep. To find such a sophisticated and visually stunning example of this group at nearly 15,000 feet challenged fundamental assumptions about how these creatures evolve and adapt to extreme environments. The mystery mollusk, later identified as Bathydevius caudactylus, represents a masterpiece of evolutionary adaptation. Every aspect of its anatomy has been fine-tuned by millions of years of evolution to survive in conditions that would be instantly lethal to most forms of life. Its transparent body allows it to remain nearly invisible to predators, while its bioluminescent capabilities serve purposes that researchers are only beginning to understand. Watching the creature move through the water is like witnessing a performance choreographed by evolution itself. The mollusk's cerata, those delicate finger-like projections, move independently, creating patterns in the water that may serve to confuse predators, attract prey, or perhaps communicate with others of its kind. The movements are hypnotic, almost musical in their rhythm, as if the creature is conducting an orchestra that only it can hear. The bioluminescence displayed by this deep-sea jewel is particularly mesmerizing. Waves of light pulse across its body in patterns that seem almost intentional, creating a light show that rivals anything created by human technology. The colors shift and flow, electric blues, ethereal greens, ghostly whites, painting temporary masterpieces against the absolute blackness of the deep ocean. Scientists believe that this bioluminescence serves multiple purposes beyond mere beauty. In the pitch-black environment of the deep sea, light becomes a crucial tool for survival. The mollusk's glowing displays might serve as a form of camouflage, breaking up its silhouette against the faint bioluminescent glow that other deep-sea creatures produce. Alternatively, the light patterns might be used to startle or confuse predators, creating a momentary distraction that allows the mollusk to escape into the darkness. The creature's feeding habits remain largely mysterious, as does almost every aspect of its life cycle. Researchers speculate that it feeds on microscopic prey, tiny organisms that drift down from the more populated waters above, or perhaps bacteria and other microorganisms that thrive in the extreme conditions of the deep ocean. The mollusk's delicate cerata may serve as both sensing organs and feeding structures, detecting chemical traces of prey in the water and then capturing these tiny organisms with movements too quick for the human eye to follow. The discovery of Bathydevius caudactylus also highlighted the incredible biodiversity that exists in the deep ocean's most extreme environments. For decades, scientists believed that life in the deepest parts of the ocean was limited to a few hardy species capable of surviving the crushing pressure, extreme cold, and complete absence of sunlight. But discoveries like this mystery mollusk are revealing that the deep sea is actually teeming with life, much of it so specialized and unusual that it bears little resemblance to anything found in shallower waters. The creature's reproductive strategies are equally enigmatic. Like many deep-sea animals, the mystery mollusk likely has a slow metabolism and an extended lifespan, adaptations that help it survive in an environment where food is scarce, and encounters with potential mates are vanishingly rare. Some researchers speculate that these creatures might be capable of reproducing asexually under certain conditions, though this remains unproven. What we do know is that the mystery mollusk represents just one example of the incredible diversity of life that exists in the deep ocean. Every expedition to these extreme depths reveals new species, new adaptations, and new mysteries that challenge our understanding of what life can be. The fact that such a beautiful and complex creature can exist at depths where the pressure would crush a human instantly serves as a powerful reminder of life's incredible resilience and adaptability. The footage of the mystery mollusk captured by the Schmidt Ocean Institute has become legendary among marine biologists and deep-sea enthusiasts. The ethereal quality of the creature's movements, combined with its stunning bioluminescent displays, creates an image that seems to belong more to the realm of art than to scientific documentation. Yet there it is, real and undeniable, a living jewel in the crown of deep-sea biodiversity. The creature's scientific name, Bathydevius caudactylus, reflects both its deep-sea habitat and its distinctive tail-like appendages. But these technical designations fail to capture the wonder and mystery of encountering such a creature in its natural environment. To watch it swim is to witness something that seems to exist outside the normal laws of biology, a reminder that evolution can create beauty in even the most unlikely places. The discovery also raises important questions about conservation and protection of deep-sea environments. As human activities, from deep-sea mining to climate change, increasingly threaten the ocean's most remote ecosystems, discoveries like the mystery mollusk serve as powerful reminders of what we stand to lose. These creatures have been evolving in isolation for millions of years, developing adaptations and behaviors that we're only now beginning to document and understand. The mystery mollusk of the Pacific Deep represents far more than just another entry in the catalog of known species. It's an ambassador from an alien world that exists right here on our own planet, a reminder that the Earth still holds wonders that can take our breath away. Its translucent beauty and ethereal grace serve as a perfect metaphor for the mystery and magic that still await discovery in the deepest parts of our world. As we drift away from the dancing lights of this underwater constellation, we carry with us the image of bioluminescent cerata waving like delicate fingers through the darkness, painting temporary masterpieces of light against the eternal black of the deep ocean. But our journey into the mysteries of the deep is far from over, and our next story takes us from the realm of the impossibly beautiful to the tragically dangerous, where human ambition meets the unforgiving reality of the underwater world. Story 7. The Shaft That Swallowed Light. In the heart of South Australia, where ancient volcanic activity has carved a landscape of sinkholes and underground chambers, there exists a place known simply as the Shaft, a name that carries with it the weight of tragedy and the chill of water so deep and dark that it seems to swallow light itself. This limestone cavern, part of the Mount Gambier cave system, appears deceptively peaceful on the surface, its crystal-clear waters reflecting the sky like a mirror. But beneath that tranquil surface lies a labyrinth so complex and dangerous that it has claimed lives and left mysteries that haunt the diving community to this day. The story of the Shaft's most tragic day begins on May 28, 1973, when 4 men made a decision that would echo through the underwater caves of Mount Gambier for decades to come. John Bockerman, Philip Parsons, Gordon Roberts, and Brian Hill were experienced recreational divers, drawn to the challenge and beauty of cave diving in an era when the sport was still developing its safety protocols and understanding of the unique dangers posed by overhead environments. Cave diving represents one of the most technically demanding and psychologically challenging forms of underwater exploration. Unlike open water diving, where a diver can always swim directly to the surface in case of emergency, cave diving traps explorers in a three-dimensional maze where a single wrong turn can mean the difference between life and death. The crystal clear waters of the shaft, while beautiful, only serve to mask the deadly complexity of the underwater cave system that lay hidden beneath. On that autumn morning in 1973, the four divers gathered at the edge of the shaft, preparing for what they believed would be a routine recreational dive. The sinkhole stretched downward into the earth like a perfectly circular well, its walls disappearing into darkness that seemed to have no bottom. The water was so clear that they could see deep into the cave system, but this visual clarity created a dangerous illusion. Distances underwater are notoriously difficult to judge, and what appears close can actually be much farther away than it seems. The team's fatal mistake was their decision to enter the cave system without a continuous guideline, a safety rope that would allow them to follow their exact path back to the entrance. This fundamental safety procedure had not yet become the universally accepted standard that it is today, and many recreational divers of the era entered caves with nothing more than their sense of direction and the belief that they could simply retrace their path when it came time to exit. As the four men descended into the shaft, they entered a world unlike anything on the surface. The cave system extended in multiple directions, with passages branching off into side chambers, false tunnels, and dead ends that could trap unwary explorers. The water temperature dropped significantly as they descended, and although their visibility remained excellent, the psychological pressure of being surrounded by solid rock on all sides began to affect their judgment. The cave system beneath the shaft is a complex network of passages carved by thousands of years of water flow through the limestone bedrock. Some chambers are vast and cathedral-like, while others narrow to restrictions that allow only one diver to pass at a time. The cave floor is covered with fine silt that, when disturbed, can reduce visibility from crystal clear to zero in a matter of seconds, a phenomenon known as a silt-out that has been the cause of countless cave diving fatalities. As the four divers explored deeper into the cave system, following passages that seemed to lead ever farther from the entrance, they made a series of decisions that would prove catastrophic. Without a guideline to mark their path, they began to lose track of which passages they had already explored and which ones led back toward the entrance. The cave's multiple levels and interconnected chambers created a three-dimensional maze that was virtually impossible to navigate by memory alone. The first sign of trouble came when the team realized they had been underwater longer than planned. In the excitement of exploration, they had lost track of time, and their air supplies were running lower than they had anticipated. In open water, this would have been a serious but manageable situation. They could simply begin an immediate ascent to the surface. But trapped in the cave system, they faced the terrifying realization that they might not have enough air to find their way back to the entrance. Panic is a cave diver's worst enemy, and as the reality of their situation became clear, the psychological pressure began to affect their decision-making. Instead of calmly retracing their most recent path, they began swimming frantically in different directions, hoping to stumble upon the exit. This chaotic search only served to confuse them further and used up precious air at an accelerated rate. The cave system's multiple levels added another layer of complexity to their predicament. What appears to be a passage leading toward the entrance at one depth may actually lead deeper into the cave system at another depth. Without proper reference points and navigation techniques, the four divers found themselves swimming in what they believed was the right direction, only to discover that they were actually penetrating deeper into the cave system. As their air supplies reached critical levels, the team made increasingly desperate attempts to find the exit. The clear water that had initially seemed like an advantage now worked against them, as they could see multiple passages leading in different directions, but had no way of knowing which one would lead them to safety. The psychological pressure of knowing that time was running out combined with the physical stress of swimming against their own buoyancy in the confined space of the cave. The silt-out that occurred during their frantic search efforts transformed the crystal-clear water into a thick, soupy mixture that reduced visibility to mere inches. Disturbed by their movements along the cave floor, decades of accumulated silt rose in clouds that turned the water into a nightmare of suspended particles. In this condition, navigation became completely impossible, and the divers found themselves trapped, not only by the cave's physical structure, but also by their own inability to see more than arm's length in any direction. Two of the divers, Bockerman and Roberts, were never recovered, their bodies lost somewhere in the complex maze of passages that extends far beyond the areas that searchers were able to explore safely. Their exact fate remains unknown, but investigators believe they became lost in the deeper sections of the cave system, where their air supplies were exhausted before they could find their way back to navigable areas. Philip Parsons was discovered days later in a narrow passage, having made it farther toward the exit than his companions, but still trapped within the cave system when his air supply ran out. The position of his body suggested that he had been attempting to follow a passage that he believed led toward the surface, but which actually led deeper into a section of the cave that had no exit. Brian Hill's fate was discovered much later, his body found in a different section of the cave system entirely. The positions of the four divers when they were found painted a tragic picture of their final moments, men swimming desperately in different directions, each believing he had found the path to safety, each ultimately trapped by the maze-like complexity of the underwater cave system. The Mount Gambier tragedy became a watershed moment in the development of cave diving safety protocols. The deaths of these four experienced divers highlighted the critical importance of proper training, equipment, and procedures when entering overhead environments. Their sacrifice led directly to the development of the safety guidelines that are now considered fundamental to cave diving, guidelines that have saved countless lives in the decades since. The incident also revealed the deceptive nature of cave diving environments. The crystal-clear water and apparently simple layout of the shaft had lured the four divers into a false sense of security. What appeared to be a straightforward underwater cave system was actually a complex network of interconnected passages that required specialized navigation techniques and safety equipment to explore safely. Modern cave diving has evolved significantly since that tragic day in 1973. Today's cave divers follow strict protocols that include the use of continuous guidelines, redundant air supplies, and extensive training in navigation and emergency procedures. The saying, "any cave can be navigated safely, but not by any diver," has become a fundamental principle of the sport, emphasizing that cave diving requires specialized skills and equipment that go far beyond basic open water diving certification. The shaft itself remains a popular destination for trained cave divers, but it is now approached with the respect and caution that its complexity demands. Modern explorers entering the cave system carry multiple guideline reels, backup air supplies, and powerful lights designed specifically for cave diving. They follow detailed maps of the cave system that have been painstakingly created over decades of careful exploration. The legacy of the Mount Gambier tragedy extends far beyond the cave diving community. The incident serves as a powerful reminder that even familiar environments can harbor deadly surprises when approached without proper preparation and respect. The crystal-clear waters of the shaft continue to attract divers from around the world, but they come now with an understanding of the cave's true nature, not as a simple underwater chamber, but as a complex three-dimensional puzzle that demands skill, preparation, and unwavering attention to safety. The four men who died in the shaft on that May Day in 1973 have become more than just statistics in the annals of diving accidents. Their story has been told and retold in diving safety courses, serving as a sobering reminder of what can happen when even experienced divers underestimate the unique challenges posed by overhead environments. Their deaths were not in vain if they served to prevent others from making the same fatal mistakes. The psychological aspects of the Mount Gambier tragedy continue to be studied by diving safety experts. The way that panic and disorientation can overcome even experienced divers when they find themselves in a life-threatening situation underground has led to improved training methods that focus not just on technical skills, but on mental preparation and stress management. Modern cave diving courses spend considerable time teaching divers how to remain calm and make rational decisions even when facing their worst fears. The shaft itself has been thoroughly mapped and studied in the decades since the tragedy, revealing the full complexity of the cave system that claimed 4 lives. The underwater chambers extend much farther than early explorers realized, with passages leading to depths of over 200 feet and side tunnels that branch off in directions that would be impossible to navigate without proper guidelines and training. Today, memorials to the 4 divers serve as somber reminders at the entrance to the shaft, their names etched in stone as a warning to others who might be tempted to take shortcuts with safety procedures. These memorials are more than just markers of tragedy. They are teaching tools that help current and future generations of divers understand the real consequences of poor decision-making in unforgiving environments. The story of the shaft reminds us that beneath even the most beautiful and apparently benign bodies of water, dangers can lurk that are invisible from the surface. The crystal-clear waters that first attracted those four divers in 1973 continue to draw explorers today, but they come now with knowledge purchased at a terrible price. The understanding that the underwater world, for all its beauty and wonder, demands respect, preparation, and humility from those who dare to enter its depths. As we rise from the haunting depths of the shaft, carrying with us the sobering reminder of how quickly adventure can turn to tragedy, our journey takes us back to the open ocean, where evolution has painted creatures in colors so deep and dark they seem to absorb light itself, creatures that have mastered the art of invisibility in a world where being seen means being eaten. Story 8. The Shadows That Swim. In the vast middle depths of the Pacific Ocean, where sunlight fades to a distant memory and bioluminescent creatures create their own constellations in the eternal night, evolution has crafted some of the most extraordinary adaptations ever discovered. Here, in the twilight zone between the surface world and the abyss, a remarkable arms race has been playing out for millions of years. A contest between predator and prey, where visibility can mean the difference between life and death. It was in this alien realm, at depths of 3,000 feet, where the pressure would crush surface dwellers and the temperature hovers just above freezing, that researchers in 2020 made a discovery so remarkable it challenged our understanding of what life could achieve. Swimming through the darkness were fish so perfectly black, they seemed to be made of pure shadow, creatures that had evolved skin capable of absorbing 99.5% of all light that touched them, rendering them nearly invisible even when illuminated directly. The discovery came during routine deep-sea trawling expeditions conducted by Smithsonian researchers, scientists who had dedicated their careers to cataloging the bizarre and wonderful creatures that inhabit the ocean's middle depths. What they hauled up from the darkness seemed at first to be holes in their nets, spaces where fish should have been, but where their eyes could detect nothing but empty blackness. Only when the specimens were examined under controlled lighting conditions did the true nature of these creatures become apparent. Species like the fangtooth and the Pacific black dragon had evolved skin so perfectly black that they absorbed virtually all visible light, creating what researchers would later describe as ultra-black camouflage. These weren't just dark fish, they were living voids, creatures that had become masters of invisibility in an environment where even the faintest glimmer of reflected light could reveal their presence to predators or prey. To understand the remarkable nature of this adaptation, imagine trying to hide in a world where every creature carries its own flashlight. In the mesopelagic zone, that vast middle layer of the ocean between 200 and 1,000 meters deep, most creatures have evolved the ability to produce their own light through bioluminescence. Jellyfish pulse with ethereal glows, squid communicate with patterns of light across their skin, and deep-sea anglerfish dangle luminous lures to attract unwary prey. In such an environment, being visible means being vulnerable. A fish that reflects even a small amount of light from a predator's bioluminescent search beam might as well be wearing a neon sign advertising its location. The ultra-black fish have solved this problem by essentially becoming invisible. Their skin absorbs so much light that they appear as empty spaces in the water, impossible to detect even when directly illuminated. The secret to their remarkable camouflage lies in the microscopic structure of their skin. Unlike ordinary fish scales that reflect light in predictable patterns, the skin of ultra-black fish is packed with specialized cells called melanophores, which contain dense concentrations of melanin, the same pigment that gives human skin its color, but organized in a way that creates the most efficient light-absorbing surface known in the natural world. Under microscopic examination, the skin of these creatures reveals an intricate landscape of specialized structures that work together to trap incoming light. The melanin granules are arranged in precise patterns that ensure photons entering the skin have virtually no chance of escaping back to the outside world. It's a design so sophisticated that materials scientists are studying it to develop new types of stealth technology and ultra-black coatings for optical instruments. The fangtooth, one of the most dramatically ultra-black fish discovered, presents a particularly striking example of this adaptation. Despite its fearsome name and needle-sharp teeth, the fangtooth is actually quite small, Most specimens are no larger than a human palm. But what it lacks in size, it makes up for in its remarkable ability to disappear completely when predators or prey shine their bioluminescent lights in its direction. The Pacific black dragon takes this adaptation even further, combining its ultra-black skin with one of the most unusual hunting strategies in the deep sea. Unlike most bioluminescent predators that produce blue or green light, colors that travel well through seawater, the black dragon has evolved the ability to produce red light, a color that most deep-sea creatures cannot see. This gives the black dragon the equivalent of night vision goggles, allowing it to illuminate potential prey while remaining completely invisible to them. Watching these creatures in their natural environment is like observing ghosts. High-definition cameras equipped with powerful lights can barely detect them, and even when they do manage to capture an image, the fish appear as dark silhouettes against the blackness of the deep ocean. They move through the water like living shadows, their presence revealed only by the displacement of water or the occasional glint of light off their teeth or eyes. The evolution of ultra-black coloration represents one of the most extreme examples of convergent evolution ever documented in marine environments. Multiple species of deep-sea fish, evolved from completely different ancestral lines, have independently developed virtually identical solutions to the problem of remaining invisible in a world full of living searchlights. This suggests that the evolutionary pressure to avoid detection in the mesopelagic zone is so intense that any fish species that doesn't develop effective camouflage simply cannot survive. The discovery of these ultra-black fish has implications that extend far beyond marine biology. Material scientists are studying the microscopic structure of their skin to develop new types of ultra-black coatings for use in optical instruments, telescopes, and stealth technology. The fish have essentially solved a complex engineering problem that human technology is still struggling with: how to create a surface that absorbs virtually all light while remaining flexible and durable. Some of the most remarkable examples of ultra-black fish are also among the most bizarre-looking creatures in the ocean. Many species combine their invisible skin with other adaptations that seem straight out of a science fiction nightmare. Enlarged mouths filled with needle-sharp teeth, bioluminescent lures that dangle like fishing lines, and eyes that have evolved to detect the faintest traces of light in the eternal darkness. The hunting strategies employed by these invisible predators are as varied as they are effective. Some species remain motionless in the water column, waiting for prey to swim within striking distance before attacking with lightning speed. Others actively hunt, using their invisibility to approach prey animals that have no idea they're being stalked. Still others use their ultra-black skin in combination with bioluminescent displays, appearing and disappearing like phantoms in the night. The study of ultra-black fish has also revealed new insights into the evolution of vision in deep-sea environments. Many of the prey species that these fish hunt have evolved increasingly sensitive eyes capable of detecting even tiny amounts of light, leading to an evolutionary arms race between the ability to remain unseen and the ability to see. The ultra-black fish represent the current pinnacle of this evolutionary competition, creatures so perfectly adapted to invisibility that they're essentially undetectable to most other forms of marine life. Perhaps most remarkably, some ultra-black fish have evolved the ability to control their coloration, switching between their ultra-black camouflage and lighter colorations depending on their needs. This adaptive camouflage allows them to blend into different backgrounds or to become visible to members of their own species for mating purposes while remaining invisible to everything else. The discovery of these creatures has also highlighted how little we still know about life in the ocean's middle depths. Despite decades of research, scientists estimate that we may have discovered less than half of the species that live in the mesopelagic zone. Each new expedition reveals creatures with adaptations so remarkable they challenge our understanding of what life can achieve. The ultra-black fish of the Pacific depths represent more than just another fascinating example of evolutionary adaptation. They're living proof that the natural world still holds innovations that surpass anything human technology has achieved. Their skin is more effective at absorbing light than the blackest materials in our laboratories, and their ability to remain invisible while swimming through a world full of bioluminescent predators represents a level of sophisticated camouflage that military technology can only dream of achieving. As we consider these shadows that swim through the eternal darkness of the deep ocean, we're reminded that evolution is the greatest engineer of all, capable of solving complex problems with elegant solutions that often exceed our own technological capabilities. The ultra-black fish have mastered the art of invisibility so completely that they've become living voids in the water, present but impossible to see, hunting and being hunted in a world where the ability to remain unseen means the difference between survival and extinction. As we drift away from these swimming shadows, these masters of invisibility who patrol the twilight depths, our journey takes us to an even more dramatic example of the ocean's power to create and destroy. From the realm of the ultra-black, we descend to the ocean floor itself, where the very foundations of the earth are being reshaped by forces so powerful they can build mountains beneath the waves. Story 9. The volcano that builds worlds. In the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, where tectonic plates collide with forces that dwarf human comprehension, there exists a realm where the very foundations of our planet are being rewritten in real time. Far beneath the surface, where crushing pressure and scalding heat create conditions more alien than the surface of Mars. The Earth itself is giving birth to new landscapes with a violence and creativity that challenges our understanding of what's possible. This is the story of Vailulu, an underwater volcano off the coast of American Samoa that, between 2001 and 2005, performed one of the most remarkable acts of creation ever witnessed by human science. In just 4 short years, this submarine giant built an entirely new mountain on the ocean floor, a towering cone of lava and rock that rose 1,000 feet from the abyss, creating a landmark that hadn't existed when the new millennium began. Picture the scene as it must have appeared to the first researchers who descended to witness this underwater phenomenon. At a depth of 2,000 feet, where sunlight has never penetrated and the pressure would instantly crush any surface dweller, the submersible Pisces 5 approached what appeared to be a glowing wound in the Earth itself. The volcano's active crater, which researchers would later nickname the Mote of Death, pulsed with an inner fire that painted the surrounding water in shades of orange and red. The discovery of Vailulu's rapid growth represented more than just a geological curiosity. It offered scientists a rare opportunity to witness the birth of new seafloor in real time. Underwater volcanoes are notoriously difficult to study, hidden beneath miles of water, and often located in some of the most remote and dangerous environments on Earth. But Vailulu was different. Its location within range of research vessels based in Samoa, combined with its dramatic activity during the early 2000s, made it accessible to scientific study in ways that most submarine volcanoes are not. The volcano sits along one of the most geologically active regions on Earth, the Pacific Ring of Fire, where the movement of massive tectonic plates creates a nearly constant symphony of earthquakes, eruptions, and underwater avalanches. Here, the Pacific Plate is slowly being forced beneath the Australian Plate in a process called subduction, creating conditions where molten rock from deep within the Earth can find pathways to the surface. What makes Vailulu particularly fascinating is the speed at which it has been growing. Most underwater volcanic formations take hundreds of thousands or even millions of years to reach significant size. But this submarine giant has been building its cone at a rate that astounded geologists, adding hundreds of feet to its height in just a few years, creating new underwater real estate at a pace that challenged everything scientists thought they knew about volcanic construction. The researchers who first explored Vailulu in detail found themselves in an environment that seemed to exist at the very boundaries of life itself. The water around the active crater was so acidic it could dissolve metal, heated to temperatures that would boil a human alive, and filled with toxic gases that would be instantly lethal to any surface-dwelling creature. Yet even in this hellish environment, life had found a way to not just survive, but thrive. The Mote of Death, despite its ominous nickname, turned out to be teeming with specially adapted organisms that had learned to harness the volcano's deadly emissions as sources of energy. Unique species of eels, their skin specially adapted to resist the acidic water, swam through plumes of volcanic gas as if they were swimming through ordinary seawater. Bizarre species of shrimp, colored bright red by the unique chemical conditions, gathered in huge swarms around vents where superheated water erupted from the seafloor. Perhaps most remarkably, extensive mats of bacteria covered large areas of the crater floor, creating what appeared to be underwater gardens in the most hostile environment imaginable. These microorganisms had evolved to use the volcano's chemical emissions, hydrogen sulfide, methane, and other compounds that would be toxic to most life forms, as sources of energy, converting these deadly gases into the building blocks of life through processes that seem to reverse the normal rules of biology. The sounds of Vailulu are as remarkable as its sights. Hydrophones placed near the volcano recorded a constant symphony of underwater eruptions, rumbling explosions, the crack and groan of new rock cooling and contracting, and the eerie whistle of gases escaping from vents in the seafloor. This audio record provided scientists with crucial data about the volcano's activity levels, allowing them to monitor eruptions from the surface and predict periods of increased activity. The growth of Vailulu's cone has been documented through repeated sonar mapping expeditions that reveal the mountain's steady expansion with each visit. High-resolution sonar images show the volcano's surface in stunning detail, revealing a landscape of fresh lava flows, gas vents, and collapsed craters that change configuration with each new eruption. The cone's sides are steep and unstable, prone to sudden landslides that can send thousands of tons of rock tumbling into the surrounding depths. One of the most intriguing aspects of Vailulu is its potential for creating entirely new ecosystems. As the volcano continues to grow, it may eventually reach shallow enough depths to support different types of marine life, creating stepping stone habitats that could allow deep-sea species to colonize new areas of the ocean. The mountain is essentially building new real estate for marine life, creating opportunities for evolution and adaptation that didn't exist before. The chemical composition of Vailulu's emissions provides insights into the deep structure of the Earth itself. Analysis of volcanic gases and lava samples reveals information about conditions hundreds of miles below the ocean floor, offering clues about processes that are otherwise completely inaccessible to direct study. The volcano serves as a window into the planet's interior, providing data that helps scientists understand how continents form and how the Earth's internal heat drives surface processes. The rapid growth of Vailulu has also raised questions about the stability of the surrounding seafloor. The enormous weight of the new volcanic cone is causing the ocean floor to slowly sink, creating a depression around the volcano that affects ocean currents and sediment patterns across a large area. This geological transformation is happening on a scale and at a speed that offers scientists a unique opportunity to study how major landscape changes affect marine ecosystems. Temperature measurements around the volcano reveal a complex pattern of heat distribution that creates distinct zones of habitability. Water temperatures range from near freezing at the edges of the volcanic field to over 400 degrees Fahrenheit near active vents, a temperature range that would be instantly lethal to most forms of life, yet which supports remarkably diverse communities of specially adapted organisms. The volcano's impact extends far beyond its immediate vicinity. Mineral-rich waters, heated by volcanic activity, create plumes that rise thousands of feet above the crater, carrying nutrients and chemical compounds that support marine life across vast areas of the Pacific. These nutrient plumes can be tracked by satellite imagery, revealing how underwater volcanic activity influences ocean chemistry across distances of hundreds of miles. Perhaps most remarkably, Vailulu represents a glimpse into how our planet looked billions of years ago, when volcanic activity was much more common, and when the early oceans were just beginning to support the first forms of life. The extreme conditions around the volcano, the toxic chemistry, the extreme temperatures, the complete absence of sunlight, mirror the environment in which life first evolved on Earth. Scientists believe that studying ecosystems like those around Vailulu may provide insights into how life might exist on other worlds. The organisms that thrive in the volcano's toxic environment have evolved biochemistries that don't depend on sunlight or oxygen, the same types of adaptations that might allow life to exist on planets or moons, with similarly extreme conditions. The ongoing study of Vailulu has revealed that underwater volcanoes play a much more important role in ocean ecosystems than previously understood. Far from being barren underwater deserts, these volcanic regions support complex food webs based on chemosynthesis, the process by which organisms convert chemical energy into biological energy without relying on photosynthesis. As Vailulu continues to grow and evolve, it serves as a natural laboratory for studying how life adapts to extreme conditions and how geological processes shape marine ecosystems. The volcano is literally building new worlds beneath the waves, creating habitats and opportunities for life that didn't exist just a few decades ago. The story of Vailulu reminds us that our planet is still very much alive and growing, that the forces that shaped the early Earth continue to operate beneath the ocean's surface. This underwater mountain builder represents the ongoing creativity of geological processes, the planet's ability to constantly reinvent itself, through processes that operate on scales of power and time that dwarf human experience. As we rise from the volcanic fires of Vailulu, leaving behind the glow of creation in the abyss, our journey takes us to mysterious waters where technology itself seems to fail, where instruments malfunction and reality bends in ways that challenge our understanding of the natural world. Story 10. The Object That Shouldn't Exist. In the cold, dark waters of the Baltic Sea, where ancient glaciers once carved valleys that now lie flooded beneath centuries of accumulated sediment, there rests an object so unusual, so geometrically impossible, that it has challenged every attempt at rational explanation since its discovery in 2011. This is not a story of natural formation or biological evolution. This is the tale of something that appears to follow rules that don't exist anywhere else on Earth. The discovery began, as many great mysteries do, with a routine expedition that stumbled upon something extraordinary. The Swedish diving team, known as Ocean X, led by experienced treasure hunters and deep-sea explorers, was conducting sonar surveys of the Baltic Sea floor, searching for shipwrecks and other artifacts that might have been lost to the sea over the centuries. The Baltic Sea is a graveyard of maritime history, its cold, oxygen-poor waters preserving wooden ships and metal objects with remarkable effectiveness. But what their sonar revealed at a depth of 300 feet was unlike anything in their database of known shipwrecks. The object appeared on their screens as a perfect circle, roughly 200 feet in diameter, with geometric patterns and features that seemed almost deliberately designed. Most disturbing of all, the sonar images showed what appeared to be a ramp or stairway leading up to the object, structures that suggested purpose and intelligence rather than the random processes of nature. When the team first released images of their discovery, the internet exploded with speculation. The object's circular shape and artificial-looking features immediately drew comparisons to science fiction spacecraft, leading to its popular nickname as the Baltic Sea UFO. But beyond the sensational headlines lay a genuine mystery that would prove resistant to easy explanation, regardless of one's beliefs about extraterrestrial visitation. The decision to dive on the object was not made lightly. The Baltic Sea in winter is one of the most challenging diving environments on Earth, with water temperatures that can kill an unprotected human in minutes and weather conditions that can change from calm to life-threatening in a matter of hours. But the mystery of the object proved irresistible, and in the summer of 2012, the Ocean X team made their descent to investigate firsthand what their sonar had revealed. What they found when they reached the object defied every expectation they had formed based on the sonar images. The structure was indeed artificial-looking, with straight edges, right angles, and surface features that seemed carved rather than naturally formed. But most unsettling of all was what happened to their equipment when they approached the object. Every piece of electronic equipment the divers carried began to malfunction as they drew near the anomaly. Their underwater cameras stopped working, producing only static or blank footage. Their radio communication systems failed, cutting them off from their surface support team. Even their diving computers, critical safety equipment that monitors depth and decompression requirements, began displaying erratic readings that made no sense. The electromagnetic interference was unlike anything the experienced divers had encountered before. Electronic equipment that had functioned perfectly throughout their descent would suddenly fail when brought within a certain distance of the object, only to resume normal operation when moved away. It was as if the structure itself was generating some kind of field that interfered with modern electronics in ways that engineers couldn't explain. Temperature readings around the object added another layer of mystery to the already puzzling discovery. While the surrounding water maintained the normal temperature for Baltic Sea depths, the area immediately around the object showed thermal anomalies that suggested some kind of internal heat source. The temperature variations formed patterns that seemed too regular and geometric to be natural, leading to speculation about unknown chemical or physical processes at work within the structure. The surface of the object itself presented a contradiction that challenged every attempt at classification. Samples taken from the structure revealed a composition of limestone and sandstone, common sedimentary rocks that would be unremarkable under normal circumstances. But the way these materials were arranged and bonded together showed patterns that geologists couldn't explain through any known natural process. Microscopic analysis of the samples revealed crystalline structures within the rock that shouldn't exist in sedimentary formations. The minerals were organized in ways that suggested they had been subjected to enormous pressures and temperatures, yet there was no evidence of the volcanic or tectonic activity that would normally create such conditions. It was as if the object had been formed by processes that didn't exist anywhere else on Earth. The geometric features of the object proved equally puzzling to researchers who studied the detailed sonar maps and underwater photography. The structure showed clear evidence of straight lines, right angles, and circular patterns that seemed too precise to be natural. Most intriguingly, these geometric elements appeared to be integrated into the structure itself, rather than carved or added after formation. One of the most controversial aspects of the discovery was the apparent presence of what team members described as artificial corridors or tunnels within the object. Sonar imaging suggested that the structure might be hollow in places, with internal chambers that could potentially be explored. However, the electromagnetic interference that plagued electronic equipment made detailed internal mapping impossible with conventional technology. The object's location added another dimension to the mystery. The Baltic Sea is a relatively young body of water in geological terms, having formed only about 10,000 years ago as glacial ice sheets retreated at the end of the last ice age. This means that anything on the seafloor predating this period would have been on dry land when it was created, a fact that makes the object's artificial-looking features even more puzzling. Attempts to date the object using conventional archaeological methods have proven inconclusive. The sedimentary layers surrounding the structure suggest it has been in place for thousands of years, but the unusual composition and structure of the object itself resists standard dating techniques. Some researchers have suggested that the object might be a remnant from a civilization that existed in the region before the Baltic Sea formed, though no other evidence of such advanced prehistoric societies has been found in the area. The electromagnetic effects associated with the object have attracted the attention of physicists and engineers who are struggling to understand what could cause such widespread electronic interference. Standard explanations, such as natural magnetic anomalies or mineral deposits, don't account for the specific types of equipment failures observed around the structure. The interference seems to affect different types of electronic devices in different ways, suggesting a complex interaction between the object and electromagnetic fields. Skeptics have proposed various natural explanations for the Baltic Sea anomaly, ranging from unusual geological formations to glacial deposits left behind by retreating ice sheets. Some have suggested that the object might be a natural concretion, a type of rock formation that can sometimes create artificial-looking shapes through chemical precipitation processes. However, these explanations struggle to account for the electromagnetic effects and the precise geometric features observed in the structure. The controversy surrounding the object has been intensified by the difficulty of conducting detailed scientific studies. The electromagnetic interference that affects electronic equipment makes it nearly impossible to use modern survey and analysis tools in the immediate vicinity of the structure. Traditional archaeological excavation techniques are impractical at a depth of 300 feet in the challenging conditions of the Baltic Sea. Commercial and military interest in the object has added another layer of complexity to the mystery. The Baltic Sea is strategically important waters, crossed by vital shipping lanes and bordered by multiple nations. The possibility that the object might represent some kind of unknown technology, whether ancient or modern, has attracted attention from organizations that prefer to conduct their investigations away from public scrutiny. The Baltic Sea anomaly has become a lightning rod for theories ranging from the scientifically plausible to the wildly speculative. Serious researchers have proposed explanations involving unusual geological processes, undiscovered archaeological sites, or experimental military technology. More exotic theories have suggested everything from ancient alien artifacts to interdimensional phenomena. What makes the Baltic Sea object particularly compelling as a mystery is the quality of the evidence surrounding it. Unlike many anomalous discoveries that rely on blurry photographs or anecdotal accounts, this object has been thoroughly documented with professional sonar equipment, underwater photography, and scientific sampling. The electromagnetic effects have been witnessed and recorded by multiple independent teams, making them difficult to dismiss as measurement errors or equipment failures. The continuing study of the Baltic Sea anomaly represents one of the most puzzling underwater mysteries of the modern era. The object challenges our understanding of geology, archaeology, and physics, presenting a combination of features that don't fit neatly into any existing category of natural or artificial formation. As we consider this enigmatic structure, resting in the cold depths of the Baltic Sea, we're reminded that our planet still holds secrets that resist explanation, even when subjected to the most advanced scientific analysis available. The object that shouldn't exist continues to generate electromagnetic anomalies and scientific controversy, a geometric puzzle lying on the seafloor that speaks a language we haven't yet learned to understand. As we drift away from the mysterious depths of the Baltic Sea, leaving behind the object that defies explanation and disrupts our instruments, our journey takes us to waters where nature itself has become the instrument of destruction, where hidden forces beneath a peaceful lake surface once unleashed invisible death across an entire landscape. Story 11. The Lake That Breathed Death. In the volcanic highlands of Cameroon, nestled among rolling hills and peaceful villages, lies a body of water so beautiful and serene that local communities have lived along its shores for generations, drawing their water from its depths and fishing in its calm, clear waters. Lake Nyos appears to be a perfect example of nature's tranquility, a circular lake of deep blue water surrounded by lush vegetation and the sounds of everyday life from nearby villages. But on the night of August 21st, 1986, this peaceful lake revealed a terrifying secret that had been building in its depths for decades. In a matter of hours, Lake Nyos would transform from a symbol of natural beauty into the instrument of one of the most unusual and horrifying natural disasters ever recorded. A catastrophe so silent and invisible that entire villages were wiped out without anyone understanding what was happening until it was too late. The day had been like any other in the villages surrounding Lake Nyos. Farmers tended their crops, children played along the shoreline, and families went about their daily routines with no sense that they were living on the edge of an invisible catastrophe. The lake itself showed no signs of disturbance. Its surface remained calm and reflective, giving no hint of the deadly forces that were building pressure 700 feet below in its deepest waters. Lake Nyos is what geologists call a maar lake, a body of water that fills a volcanic crater formed by explosive eruptions in the distant past. The lake sits atop a chamber of magma deep within the earth, and carbon dioxide gas from this volcanic source slowly seeps into the bottom waters of the lake through springs and fissures in the lake bed. Under normal circumstances, this gas would gradually escape to the surface and dissipate harmlessly into the atmosphere. But Lake Nyos is anything but normal. The lake's great depth, over 700 feet at its deepest point, combined with its tropical location, creates a unique and deadly set of conditions. The bottom waters of the lake are much colder and denser than the surface waters, creating distinct layers that don't mix. As carbon dioxide seeps into these deep, cold waters, it dissolves in enormous concentrations, creating a massive reservoir of liquid carbon dioxide under pressure at the bottom of the lake. For years, possibly decades, this carbon dioxide had been accumulating in the lake's depths, reaching concentrations that were far beyond the normal saturation point. The deep waters of Lake Nyos had essentially become a giant bottle of pressurized soda water containing 1.6 million tons of dissolved carbon dioxide gas, enough to kill everything living within a 15-mile radius if suddenly released. The trigger for the disaster remains a subject of scientific debate, but most researchers believe it was a landslide or some other disturbance that caused the lake's layered waters to suddenly mix. When the carbon dioxide-saturated bottom water was brought into contact with the lower-pressure surface water, the dissolved gas came out of solution all at once, creating a massive eruption of carbon dioxide that shot hundreds of feet into the air above the lake. The eruption itself was witnessed by survivors from distant villages, who described seeing a white fountain shooting up from the center of the lake, followed by a strange white mist that began to flow down the hillsides like a slow-moving river. But this mist was not water vapor. It was nearly pure carbon dioxide, an invisible killer that displaced the oxygen in the air as it flowed through the valleys surrounding the lake. Carbon dioxide is heavier than air, so the massive cloud of gas hugged the ground as it spread outward from the lake, following the natural contours of the landscape and flowing through villages like a silent, invisible flood. The gas was odorless and colorless, giving no warning to the people and animals in its path. Victims simply went to sleep and never woke up, suffocated by the carbon dioxide-rich air that had displaced the oxygen they needed to breathe. The scale of the disaster became apparent only when rescue workers finally reached the area the next day. Entire villages were found with their populations dead, people lying where they had fallen, with no signs of struggle or distress. Animals lay dead in the fields, and even insects and birds had been killed by the oxygen-depleted air. The silence was absolute and eerie, broken only by the sound of the wind moving through abandoned homes. Nearly 2,000 people died in the Lake Nyos disaster, along with thousands of livestock and virtually every living creature within the gas cloud's path. The victims showed no signs of violence or disease. They had simply been asphyxiated by an atmosphere that had been suddenly drained of oxygen. Survivors described hearing a rumbling sound from the direction of the lake, followed by a strange smell that some compared to gunpowder or rotten eggs, before losing consciousness. The few survivors of the disaster were those who happened to be at higher elevations when the gas cloud passed through, or who were far enough away from the lake to be outside the affected area. Some described waking up hours later to find their families and neighbors dead around them, with no understanding of what had caused the catastrophe. The psychological trauma of these survivors was as devastating as the physical toll of the disaster itself. Emergency responders who arrived at the scene found themselves dealing with a type of disaster that had no precedent in recorded history. The invisible nature of the killer made it impossible to determine the exact boundaries of the affected area, and there was initial concern that the lake might release another deadly cloud at any time. The entire region had to be evacuated while scientists worked to understand what had happened and whether it could happen again. The investigation into the Lake Nyos disaster revealed that this type of catastrophe, known as a limnic eruption, is extremely rare but not unique. Only 3 such events have been documented in recorded history, all involving lakes in volcanic regions where carbon dioxide seeps into deep waters and accumulates over time. The scientific community was forced to acknowledge a new type of natural disaster that had been entirely unknown before this tragic demonstration of its power. The mechanism behind limnic eruptions is now well understood, but predicting when they will occur remains extremely difficult. The stability of the gas-saturated water depends on a delicate balance of factors including water temperature, pressure, and the concentration of dissolved gases. A relatively small disturbance, an earthquake, a landslide, or even a change in weather patterns can trigger a catastrophic release of gas that turns a peaceful lake into a weapon of mass destruction. Following the disaster, international teams of scientists worked to develop systems to prevent future limnic eruptions at Lake Nyos. The solution involved installing a series of pipes that extend from the surface to the bottom of the lake, allowing the dissolved carbon dioxide to escape gradually and safely rather than building up to dangerous concentrations. These degassing systems work like giant straws, providing a controlled release valve that prevents the accumulation of deadly gas concentrations. The installation of these degassing pipes required extraordinary engineering challenges, as workers had to operate on a lake that still contained massive amounts of dissolved carbon dioxide and could potentially release another lethal cloud at any time. The work was carried out with extreme caution, using remote-controlled equipment and maintaining emergency evacuation procedures throughout the installation process. Today, Lake Nyos remains under constant monitoring, with instruments that measure gas concentrations, water temperature, and other factors that could indicate the buildup of dangerous conditions. The degassing system continues to operate, gradually reducing the amount of dissolved carbon dioxide in the lake's deep waters and making another catastrophic eruption less likely. The disaster at Lake Nyos serves as a sobering reminder that nature can kill in ways that we never expect and barely understand. The lake that had provided water and sustenance to local communities for generations revealed itself to be sitting on top of an invisible bomb that had been quietly building pressure for decades. The peaceful surface of the water concealed a deadly secret that claimed nearly 2,000 lives in a single night. The Lake Nyos disaster also highlights the importance of scientific research into rare natural phenomena. Before 1986, limnic eruptions were unknown to science, and there was no way to predict or prevent such catastrophes. The tragedy at Lake Nyos forced the scientific community to recognize a new type of natural disaster and develop methods to monitor and prevent future occurrences. Perhaps most chilling of all is the realization that there are other lakes around the world with similar characteristics to Lake Nyos, deep volcanic lakes where carbon dioxide could be accumulating in dangerous concentrations. The disaster in Cameroon has prompted scientists to identify and monitor these potentially dangerous bodies of water, working to prevent future tragedies before they can occur. The story of Lake Nyos is a reminder that the Earth's most peaceful and beautiful places can sometimes harbor the most unexpected dangers. The lake continues to exist, still beautiful and serene on the surface, but now bearing the scars of the tragedy it unleashed and the scientific infrastructure designed to prevent it from killing again. As we leave the haunting shores of Lake Nyos, where an invisible killer once flowed like water through peaceful valleys, our journey takes us back to the open ocean, where mysteries of a different kind await in the vast emptiness of the deep sea. Stories of ships that vanished not from natural disaster, but from forces that remain unexplained to this day. Story 12. The Ship That Sailed into Legend. In the annals of maritime mystery, there are disappearances that capture the imagination and refuse to release it. Vanishings so complete and inexplicable that they transcend mere historical curiosity to become legends that haunt the collective consciousness of anyone who dares to venture onto the open ocean. Among these ghost stories of the sea, one stands apart for its sheer scale and the complete absence of any trace: the disappearance of the USS Cyclops in March 1918, a vanishing so absolute that it seems to defy the very laws of physics. The USS Cyclops was not just any ship, she was a behemoth of her time, a 542-foot naval auxiliary vessel designed to carry the massive quantities of coal that powered the steam-driven warships of World War I. Launched in 1910, the Cyclops represented the industrial might of the early 20th century, a floating warehouse capable of carrying over 10,000 tons of cargo across the vast expanses of the Atlantic Ocean. Her very size should have made her impossible to lose, and yet, lose her the ocean did, along with all 309 souls aboard. The story of the Cyclops' final voyage begins in the strategic port of Barbados in early March 1918. As World War I raged across Europe and the Atlantic, had become a battlefield where German U-boats hunted Allied shipping with ruthless efficiency. The ship had been loaded with 10,800 tons of manganese ore, a critical material for steel production that was desperately needed by American war industries. This was valuable cargo, but routine, the kind of mundane supply run that kept the machinery of war functioning. Command of the vessel rested with Captain George Washington Worley, a man whose background would later fuel countless conspiracy theories about the ship's fate. Born in Germany but naturalized as an American citizen, Worley had spent decades at sea and was known as an experienced, if eccentric, mariner. His habits were unusual. He often walked the deck in his underwear and bedroom slippers, and he had a reputation for making decisions that puzzled his crew. But nothing in his record suggested the kind of catastrophic judgment that could doom an entire ship. On March 4th, 1918, the Cyclops departed Barbados, bound for Baltimore, Maryland, carrying her cargo of manganese ore and a crew that included naval personnel and civilian workers. The weather was favorable, the ship was well supplied, and the route was familiar, a standard Atlantic crossing that merchant vessels had been making for decades. There was no reason to expect that this voyage would be any different from the thousands of others that had preceded it. But somewhere between the tropical waters of the Caribbean and the familiar coastline of Maryland, the USS Cyclops simply ceased to exist. She sent no distress signal, left no wreckage, and provided no clue about what had befallen her. The massive vessel, her precious cargo, and every person aboard vanished, as completely as if they had been erased from reality itself. When the Cyclops failed to arrive in Baltimore on her scheduled date, initial concern was tempered by the realities of wartime navigation. Ships were often delayed by the need to avoid submarine-infested waters, mechanical problems, or changes in orders that might not be immediately communicated to port authorities. But as days stretched into weeks with no word from the vessel, concern turned to alarm, and alarm gradually gave way to the grim realization that something catastrophic had occurred. The search for the Cyclops became one of the most extensive maritime rescue operations of its time. Naval vessels and aircraft scoured the ship's projected route, examining every mile of ocean between Barbados and the American coast. Wireless stations along the eastern seaboard listened constantly for any signal that might indicate the ship's location or fate. Coastal observers watched for wreckage or survivors that might wash ashore. But the ocean had swallowed the Cyclops so completely that not a single piece of identifiable debris was ever found. The complete absence of wreckage became one of the most puzzling aspects of the mystery. Even the most catastrophic sinking typically leaves behind some trace: life preservers, cargo, personal effects, or pieces of the ship itself. The ocean is vast, but it's also a great preserver and distributor of floating objects. The fact that nothing from the Cyclops ever surfaced suggested either that the ship had sunk in extraordinarily deep water, or that she had met with a fate so unusual that normal patterns of wreckage distribution didn't apply. The theories about what happened to the USS Cyclops have proliferated over the decades since her disappearance, ranging from the plausible to the fantastical. The most straightforward explanation involves the ship's cargo of manganese ore, which was both extremely dense and prone to shifting in rough seas. If the cargo had broken loose from its restraints during a storm, the sudden redistribution of 10,800 tons of ore could have caused the ship to capsize so quickly that there was no time to send a distress signal or launch lifeboats. Structural failure represents another possibility that has gained credibility over the years. The Cyclops was heavily loaded with cargo that pushed her near her maximum capacity, and the ship's design may not have been adequate for the stresses imposed by such massive loads in rough seas. If the ship's hull had failed catastrophically, splitting in two or suffering some other structural collapse, she could have sunk so rapidly that no one aboard had time to react. The wartime context of the disappearance has fueled theories about enemy action. German U-boats were active in the Atlantic in 1918, and the Cyclops would have been a valuable target for submarines seeking to disrupt American supply lines. However, German naval records from the period, examined after the war, contain no mention of any submarine attack on a vessel matching the Cyclops' description. This doesn't definitively rule out enemy action, but it makes it less likely than other explanations. Perhaps the most intriguing theories involve the ship's captain and the possibility of human factors in the disaster. Captain Worley's German birth and sometimes erratic behavior led to speculation about sabotage or mutiny, though there's no concrete evidence to support such theories. More plausibly, Worley might have made navigation errors or poor decisions about weather routing that put the ship in danger. The captain's reputation for unconventional behavior raises questions about his judgment in critical situations. The disappearance of the Cyclops has also become associated with the legend of the Bermuda Triangle, that mythical area of the Atlantic where ships and aircraft are supposed to vanish under mysterious circumstances. The Cyclops disappeared in waters that fall within various definitions of the triangle, and her fate has been cited as evidence for supernatural or extraterrestrial explanations for the region's supposed anomalous properties. However, the historical record shows that the triangle has no higher rate of disappearances than any other heavily traveled area of ocean. Modern analysis of the Cyclops mystery has focused on the ship's design and the nature of her cargo. Computer modeling of the vessel's stability characteristics suggests that she may have been dangerously top-heavy when fully loaded, particularly if her cargo shifted even slightly. The manganese ore she was carrying was not only extremely heavy but also prone to liquefaction under certain conditions. If water had entered the cargo holds, the ore could have turned into a liquid mass that would make the ship virtually uncontrollable. The weather conditions during the Cyclops' final voyage have been reconstructed from historical records, revealing that the ship likely encountered rough seas and strong winds as she made her way north from Barbados. These conditions would have placed additional stress on a heavily loaded vessel and increased the likelihood of cargo shifting or structural failure. The combination of bad weather, an overloaded ship, and possibly poor decision-making by the captain could have created a perfect storm of circumstances leading to disaster. Advances in deep ocean exploration technology have renewed hope that the wreck of the Cyclops might someday be found, providing definitive answers about her fate. The ship likely sank in waters thousands of feet deep, where the crushing pressure and complete darkness have preserved countless other wrecks for decades or centuries. Side-scan sonar and autonomous underwater vehicles now make it possible to search vast areas of ocean floor with unprecedented detail and accuracy. However, the search area for the Cyclops remains enormous, encompassing thousands of square miles of deep ocean. Without a more precise idea of where the ship met her fate, locating her wreck remains a daunting challenge that would require massive resources and considerable luck. The ocean has kept the secret of the Cyclops for over a century, and it may keep it for centuries more. The disappearance of the USS Cyclops represents the largest non-combat loss of life in U.S. Navy history, a tragedy that claimed 309 lives without leaving behind any definitive explanation for how or why it occurred. The mystery has inspired countless books, documentaries, and investigations, each attempting to solve a puzzle that may ultimately be unsolvable with the evidence currently available. The story of the Cyclops serves as a humbling reminder of the ocean's vast indifference to human ambition and technology. Despite our advances in navigation, communication, and ship design, the sea remains capable of claiming vessels and lives without explanation or apology. The fate of the great ship and her crew joins the ranks of maritime mysteries that may never be fully understood, questions that echo across the decades like the sound of waves against an empty shore. As we drift away from the vanishing point where the USS Cyclops disappeared into legend, carrying with us the haunting image of a massive ship sailing into nothingness, our journey takes us to waters where the earth itself reaches toward the sky, where hidden mountains rise from the deep ocean floor to create monuments of coral and stone that rival anything built by human hands. Story 13. The Tower That Touched the Sky. In the vast underwater landscape of Australia's Great Barrier Reef, where coral cities stretch as far as the eye can see in every direction, there exists a realm of such incredible biodiversity and architectural complexity that it rivals anything humans have ever built. This is a world where living organisms have spent millions of years constructing underwater cathedrals, where creatures no larger than a pinhead collaborate to build structures that can be seen from space. But in 2020, researchers discovered something in these waters that challenged everything they thought they knew about the reef's hidden geography. Rising from the ocean floor like a limestone skyscraper, invisible to the surface world but towering majestically in the deep, scientists aboard the research vessel Falkor encountered a coral reef pinnacle so massive and so perfectly hidden that it had remained undetected despite the Great Barrier Reef being one of the most studied marine ecosystems on Papakan Nadidas. Earth. This underwater monument stood 1,640 feet tall, higher than the Eiffel Tower, yet its peak remained nearly 200 feet below the surface, concealed in the deep blue waters that had kept its secrets for countless millennia. The discovery came about through the kind of systematic exploration that has become the hallmark of modern oceanography. The Falkor, operated by the Schmidt Ocean Institute, was conducting detailed mapping surveys of the reef's outer edges using advanced sonar technology that could penetrate the deep waters and reveal the three-dimensional structure of the seafloor with unprecedented accuracy. What their instruments revealed was a geological formation so massive and so unexpected that the research team initially questioned their equipment. The pinnacle rose from a depth of over 1,300 feet, its base spanning more than a mile in diameter, creating an underwater mountain that dwarfed most land-based peaks. But this was no ordinary mountain. It was a living structure, built grain by grain over millions of years by countless generations of coral polyps, each no larger than a match head, working together in one of nature's most remarkable examples of collective construction. When the remotely operated vehicle, Sebastian, descended to explore this hidden giant, its cameras revealed a world that seemed to exist outside the normal rules of underwater ecology. The pinnacle was not a barren limestone tower, but a thriving metropolis of marine life that had been evolving in isolation for countless generations. Every surface of the structure was covered with coral formations of extraordinary diversity, creating a vertical ecosystem that supported creatures found nowhere else on Earth. The walls of the pinnacle were like the pages of a living history book, with different layers telling the story of changing ocean conditions over geological time. Near the base, ancient coral formations spoke of a time when sea levels were lower and water conditions were dramatically different from today. As the eye traveled upward along the pinnacle's sides, the coral species gradually changed, reflecting the evolution of marine ecosystems over millions of years. Schools of fish swirled around the pinnacle in numbers that defied counting, creating living galaxies of silver and gold that moved through the water with choreographed precision. Reef sharks patrolled the structure's outer edges like sentinels, their sleek forms cutting through the blue water as they maintained their eternal watch over this underwater fortress. Giant grouper, some weighing hundreds of pounds, had claimed territories among the pinnacle's coral formations, ruling their domains with the dignity of ancient monarchs. What made this discovery particularly remarkable was its location relative to the known boundaries of the Great Barrier Reef. The pinnacle rose from waters that had been considered part of the reef's outer edge, a region that scientists thought they had thoroughly mapped and understood. The fact that such a massive structure could remain undetected highlighted how much of our ocean remains unexplored, even in areas that we consider well known. The pinnacle's formation represented a masterpiece of biological engineering that had been taking place over millions of years. Coral polyps, working without any central plan or coordination, had somehow created a structure of perfect proportions and incredible stability. The limestone skeleton they secreted had been shaped by ocean currents, wave action, and the complex chemistry of seawater into a tower that had withstood countless storms, sea level changes, and climate fluctuations. The Discovery team spent weeks documenting every aspect of the pinnacle's ecosystem, using high-definition cameras and sophisticated sampling equipment to catalog the incredible diversity of life that called this underwater skyscraper home. They found species of coral that had never been scientifically described, fish that had evolved unique characteristics due to their isolation on the pinnacle, and invertebrates that had developed specialized adaptations for life on the structure's vertical walls. The pinnacle's coral gardens displayed colors and patterns that seemed almost too beautiful to be real. Massive table corals created underwater plateaus where smaller fish found shelter from the currents, while delicate branching corals formed intricate laceworks that filtered the deep blue water like living stained glass windows. Soft corals swayed in the current like underwater flowers. Their polyps extended to capture microscopic prey from the nutrient-rich waters flowing past the structure. The base of the pinnacle revealed evidence of the geological forces that had shaped this underwater monument. Ancient limestone formations showed where the structure had its origins in the geological processes that formed the Great Barrier Reef millions of years ago. But unlike the flat reef platforms that make up most of the Great Barrier Reef system, this pinnacle had grown vertically, reaching toward the surface like a living tower seeking sunlight. The structure's influence on local ocean currents created unique ecological conditions that supported extraordinary biodiversity. As water flowed around the pinnacle's massive bulk, it created upwelling patterns that brought nutrient-rich deep water to the surface, feeding the coral communities and supporting the complex food webs that had evolved around the structure. The pinnacle had essentially created its own weather system underwater, generating the conditions necessary to support its remarkable ecosystem. Temperature and current measurements around the pinnacle revealed the complex interplay of forces that had shaped its growth over geological time. The structure's position in relation to deep ocean currents had influenced the types of corals that could survive at different levels, creating distinct ecological zones from the base to the peak. Each zone supported different communities of marine life, creating a vertical biodiversity gradient that packed more ecological diversity into a single structure than most entire reef systems. The discovery of the pinnacle also provided insights into the resilience of coral reef ecosystems in the face of climate change and human impacts. While many shallow reef areas have suffered bleaching and degradation due to warming ocean temperatures, the deeper waters around the pinnacle had remained relatively stable, suggesting that these hidden reef structures might serve as refugia for marine species during periods of environmental stress. The three-dimensional mapping of the pinnacle revealed architectural details that challenged understanding of how coral structures grow and develop. The tower sides were not smooth, but featured elaborate terraces, overhangs, and caves that created countless microhabitats for different species. The precision of these formations suggested that coral growth follows rules and patterns that scientists are only beginning to understand. Perhaps most remarkably, the pinnacle appeared to be still growing, with active coral communities adding new layers to its structure even as the research team studied it. This meant that the tower was not just a relic of ancient geological processes, but a living, growing entity that continued to evolve and change. The Discovery team was witnessing construction on a scale that dwarfed any human engineering project, yet accomplished through the collective efforts of organisms so small they were invisible to the naked eye. The age of the pinnacle remained a subject of intense scientific speculation. Carbon dating of samples from different levels suggested that the structure had been growing for at least several 100,000 years, possibly much longer. The lower sections of the pinnacle contained coral species that had been extinct for millennia, preserved in the limestone like fossils in a vertical museum of marine evolution. The discovery of this hidden giant forced scientists to reconsider their understanding of reef formation and distribution. If such a massive structure could remain undetected in one of the world's most studied marine ecosystems, how many other coral pinnacles might be hidden in the deep waters around reef systems worldwide? The implications were staggering. Entire underwater landscapes might exist that have never been mapped or explored. The ecological significance of the pinnacle extended far beyond its immediate vicinity. The structure appeared to serve as a crucial way station for migrating marine species, providing food, shelter, and breeding grounds for animals traveling vast distances across the Pacific. Sea turtles, manta rays, and whale sharks had all been observed visiting the pinnacle, suggesting that it played an important role in ocean-wide migration patterns. The pinnacle's discovery also highlighted the importance of continued exploration and mapping of our oceans. Despite centuries of maritime activity and decades of scientific study, vast areas of the seafloor remain as unknown to us as the surface of distant planets. Advanced sonar technology and remotely operated vehicles are revealing that the underwater world is far more complex and diverse than we ever imagined. The pristine condition of the pinnacle's ecosystem provided a glimpse of what coral reefs might have looked like before human impacts began to affect marine environments. The structure showed no signs of bleaching, pollution, or other forms of degradation that have affected many shallow reef systems. Its deep water location had protected it from the temperature fluctuations and chemical changes that have stressed coral reefs in shallower waters. The research team's documentation of the pinnacle created a detailed baseline that will allow future scientists to monitor changes in this remarkable ecosystem. High-resolution photography and video mapping provided a comprehensive record of the structure's current state, creating a time capsule that will help researchers understand how deep reef ecosystems respond to changing ocean conditions. The hidden tower of coral has become a symbol of the ocean's endless capacity to surprise and inspire us. Its very existence challenges our assumptions about the natural world and reminds us that even in the most familiar places, extraordinary discoveries await those who look beneath the surface. The pinnacle stands as a testament to the power of life to create beauty and complexity on a scale that rivals anything in the known universe. As we ascend from the majestic coral tower that has been growing in secret for countless millennia, carrying with us the image of its living walls and the schools of fish that call it home, our journey takes us to waters where human courage meets the ocean's indifference, where survival depends not on the grand architecture of coral cities, but on the fragile threads of hope and determination that can sustain life even in the face of unimaginable peril. Story 14. When the ocean shows its teeth. There are moments in the underwater world when the peaceful blue universe that divers cherish transforms in an instant into something primal and terrifying. When the delicate balance between human visitor and marine predator tips toward violence, with consequences that can echo through a lifetime. This is the story of one such moment, a deep-sea encounter that began as a routine dive and ended with a stark reminder that in the ocean's realm, humans are always visitors, never masters. The dive began like countless others that had preceded it, a descent into the clear blue waters where sunlight filters down in cathedral rays and the noise of the surface world fades into peaceful silence. At 100 feet below the surface, the diver moved through a liquid universe where schools of fish moved like silver clouds, and the pressure of depth created a sensation of weightless, flying through three-dimensional space. But on this particular dive, a series of small mistakes and momentary lapses in judgment would combine to create a situation that nearly cost a life and left scars both physical and psychological that would take years to heal. The ocean, which had seemed so welcoming and familiar during thousands of previous dives, was about to reveal its capacity for sudden, shocking violence. The first mistake was subtle, a moment of distraction that led to the accidental release of the weight belt, those lead weights that divers wear to counteract the buoyancy of their wetsuits and equipment. In an instant, the diver found themselves shooting toward the surface with dangerous speed. The increasing buoyancy of their wetsuit and the expanding air in their lungs, creating an uncontrolled ascent that threatened to cause decompression sickness, the potentially fatal condition known to divers as the bends. Panic began to set in as the diver realized the gravity of the situation. Breaking the most fundamental rule of safe diving, they held their breath during the rapid ascent, allowing the expanding air in their lungs to create dangerous pressure that could rupture lung tissue. The peaceful blue world around them had suddenly become a race against physics and physiology, with potentially fatal consequences waiting at every turn. But the lost weight belt and dangerous ascent were only the beginning of a nightmare that was about to unfold in the deep blue water. As the divers struggled with their buoyancy and tried to regain control of their ascent, they were unaware that their erratic movements and the disturbance they were creating in the water had attracted the attention of something that had been patrolling these waters long before humans ever thought to explore them. The shark appeared with the terrifying suddenness that characterizes these ancient predators. One moment the diver was alone in the blue water, struggling with equipment and trying to control their panic, and the next moment they were face to face with several feet of perfectly evolved killing machine that had materialized from the depths like a nightmare made flesh. Bull sharks are among the most dangerous predators in the ocean, not because they're the largest or the fastest, but because they're the most unpredictable and aggressive. They can tolerate fresh water as well as salt water, allowing them to penetrate far up rivers where other sharks cannot go. They're opportunistic hunters with powerful jaws and a reputation for attacking humans more frequently than almost any other shark species. The attack, when it came, happened with the lightning speed that characterizes shark predation. The bull shark's powerful jaws clamped down on the diver's tricep with crushing force, needle-sharp teeth designed for tearing flesh, penetrating wetsuit and skin with ease. The pain was immediate and overwhelming, but it was accompanied by something even more terrifying: the realization that they were locked in mortal combat with a predator that had been perfecting its hunting techniques for over 400 million years. Underwater, screaming is impossible, but the diver's mind was screaming as the shark's jaws worked on their arm, trying to tear away the chunk of flesh it had claimed. The water around them began to cloud with blood, creating a crimson fog that reduced visibility and added to the surreal horror of the situation. In that moment, all the training and experience of years of diving was reduced to one simple imperative: survive. The divers' salvation came from a technique that had been drilled into them during their early training: the sharp, metallic sound of a dive tank being struck with a metal object. Using whatever strength they could muster while fighting shock and blood loss, they began banging on their aluminum air tank with their dive knife, creating a sound that penetrated the water like an underwater alarm bell. The noise worked. Sharks, despite their reputation as mindless killing machines, are actually highly intelligent predators that prefer easy prey to dangerous confrontations. The sudden unnatural sound created enough confusion and alarm to convince the bull shark to release its grip and disappear back into the blue depths as quickly as it had appeared, leaving the diver alone with their injuries and the growing realization of how close they had come to becoming another statistic in the ocean's catalog of human casualties. But the ordeal was far from over. Blood loss from the massive wound in their tricep was creating a life-threatening emergency that required immediate medical attention. The rapid ascent had also caused symptoms of decompression sickness, creating a double medical emergency that pushed the limits of what emergency medical protocols could handle. The diver's body was fighting battles on multiple fronts: blood loss, tissue damage, and the nitrogen bubbles in their bloodstream that could cause paralysis or death. The rescue that followed was a testament to the training and dedication of dive boat crews who spend their lives ferrying adventurers to the ocean's most beautiful and dangerous places. The crew's response was immediate and professional, applying pressure to stop the bleeding while administering emergency oxygen to help counteract the effects of decompression sickness. But even with rapid response and expert care, the severity of the injuries meant that the outcome was far from certain. The boat ride to shore seemed to take forever, each wave and vibration sending fresh spikes of pain through the diver's mangled arm. The injury was severe enough that it would require 172 stitches to close, a medical procedure that would take hours and leave permanent scars, both visible and invisible. The road to recovery would be measured in years, not months, with physical therapy, psychological counseling, and the slow, painful process of regaining trust in the underwater world that had nearly claimed their life. The attack highlighted the role that human error plays in most diving accidents. The lost weight belt, the panicked ascent, the failure to follow basic safety protocols, each mistake had cascaded into the next, creating a situation where an already dangerous predator encounter became life-threatening. The ocean is unforgiving of errors, and even small mistakes can have consequences that echo through a lifetime. The psychological aftermath of the attack proved to be as challenging as the physical recovery. The diver who had once moved through the underwater world with confidence and joy now faced the task of overcoming deep-seated fears about returning to the environment that had nearly killed them. The peaceful blue water that had once represented freedom and beauty was now associated with pain, terror, and the very real possibility of death. Recovery involved not just healing the physical wounds, but rebuilding the mental framework that allowed for confident diving in environments where large predators might be present. This process required the help of specialized therapists who understood the unique psychological challenges faced by diving accident survivors. as well as the support of the diving community that had rallied around one of their own. The incident also served as a powerful reminder of the importance of following basic safety protocols, even during routine dives. The weight belt should have been properly secured, the ascent should have been controlled, and emergency procedures should have been followed from the moment problems began to develop. The attack might still have occurred, but the severity of the overall incident could have been greatly reduced. Years later, the scars remain, both the visible lines across the diver's tricep where shark teeth penetrated flesh, and the invisible marks left by an encounter with the ocean's raw, primitive power. The incident became a teaching tool, a story told in diving classes around the world, as an example of how quickly routine dives can turn dangerous, and how human error can compound natural hazards to create life-threatening situations. But perhaps most importantly, the survival story became a testament to human resilience and the power of proper training and emergency response. The diver not only survived an encounter that could easily have been fatal, but eventually returned to the underwater world that had nearly claimed their life, bringing with them a deeper respect for the ocean's power and a more careful approach to diving safety. The bull shark that attacked that day disappeared back into the blue depths from which it came, continuing its ancient role as apex predator in an ecosystem where it had evolved over millions of years. For the shark, the encounter was simply a case of mistaken identity, a moment when a struggling diver looked enough like injured prey to trigger the attack response that has kept its species alive since before the dinosaurs walked the earth. As we surface from this harrowing tale of survival, carrying with us the visceral reminder of how quickly the ocean can turn from sanctuary to battleground, our journey takes us to the deepest, most mysterious places on our planet, where the pressure would crush a human instantly, and where evolution has created creatures so alien they seem to belong to other worlds entirely. Story 15. The Cotton Balls of the Abyss. In the deepest places of our planet's oceans, where the weight of water above could crush a human body in milliseconds, and where eternal darkness reigns supreme, there exists a landscape so alien and desolate that it seems to belong to another world entirely. These are the abyssal plains, vast underwater deserts that stretch for thousands of miles across the ocean floor, covered in sediment so fine it creates underwater snowfields that have been accumulating for millions of years. It's in this alien landscape, at crushing depths between 11,500 and 18,000 feet below the surface, that deep-sea explorers in 2024 encountered something so unexpected and so inexplicable that it challenged every assumption about what could exist in the most extreme environments on Earth. Scattered across the barren seafloor like forgotten toys in an abandoned playground were thousands upon thousands of perfectly spherical objects, each one fluffy and white as a cotton ball, glowing softly under the powerful lights of remotely operated vehicles. The discovery came during one of the most ambitious deep-sea mapping expeditions ever undertaken, a systematic survey of the Pacific Ocean's deepest regions using technology so advanced it could reveal details of the seafloor with unprecedented clarity. The research team expected to find the usual features of abyssal plains, endless expanses of gray sediment, broken only by the occasional rock outcrop, or the trail left by some deep-sea creature as it searched for food in the underwater desert. What they found instead was a landscape transformed into something that looked more like a field of dandelions that had gone to seed. If dandelions could survive in an environment where the pressure would instantly liquefy any surface-dwelling organism, and where the temperature hovers just above freezing. The spheres were everywhere, scattered across the sediment in patterns that seemed too organized to be random, yet too chaotic to be the result of any known biological or geological process. Each sphere was roughly the same size, about the diameter of a tennis ball, and possessed a texture that defied easy categorization. Under the intense illumination of the remotely operated vehicle's lights, they appeared to glow with an inner luminescence, their surfaces so uniformly white and fluffy that they seemed almost artificially manufactured. Yet they were clearly natural phenomena, distributed across thousands of square miles of ocean floor in numbers that reached into the millions. The uniformity of the spheres was perhaps the most puzzling aspect of their discovery. In nature, such perfect consistency usually indicates either biological origin, like the egg cases of deep-sea creatures, or chemical precipitation processes that create mineral formations under very specific conditions. But these spheres didn't match the characteristics of any known biological structure, nor did they resemble any type of mineral formation that scientists had previously documented. When the remotely operated vehicle's mechanical arms carefully collected samples of the mysterious spheres for analysis, the objects proved to be surprisingly delicate, compressing slightly under even gentle pressure, but maintaining their spherical shape with remarkable consistency. The texture was unlike anything the research team had encountered in decades of deep-sea exploration, soft and yielding like organic tissue, yet with a structural integrity that suggested some type of internal framework or organization. Initial analysis of the collected samples revealed a composition that only deepened the mystery. The spheres appeared to be primarily organic in nature, composed of complex proteins and other biological molecules, yet they showed no signs of cellular structure or the types of organization patterns that characterize known life forms. They were neither plant nor animal, neither bacteria nor fungi, but something that seemed to exist in a category entirely their own. The distribution pattern of the spheres across the abyssal plains suggested that they were not randomly scattered debris, but rather the result of some systematic process that operated on a massive scale. Aerial surveys using high-resolution sonar revealed that the spheres formed loose clusters and chains that extended for miles across the seafloor, creating patterns that hinted at underlying currents, chemical gradients, or other environmental factors that influenced their formation or distribution. Perhaps most intriguingly, the spheres appeared to be actively growing or changing. Time-lapse photography taken over the course of several days revealed subtle movements and alterations in the spheres' positions and appearances. Some spheres seemed to merge together when they came into contact, while others appeared to divide or fragment into smaller units. This dynamic behavior suggested that the spheres were not simply inert objects, but rather represented some type of active process or phenomenon. The chemical analysis of the surrounding sediment provided additional clues about the sphere's mysterious nature. The areas where spheres were most abundant showed elevated concentrations of certain organic compounds and trace elements that suggested ongoing biochemical processes. The sediment itself appeared to be chemically altered in the vicinity of the spheres, as if their presence was somehow changing the chemistry of the ocean floor. Temperature measurements around the spheres revealed another puzzling characteristic. They appeared to be slightly warmer than the surrounding environment, generating heat through some unknown internal process. The temperature difference was small, only a few degrees, but it was consistent across all the spheres that were measured. This thermal signature suggested that the spheres were metabolically active in some way, though the nature of their energy source remained a complete mystery. The Discovery team proposed several theories to explain the origin and nature of the fluffy spheres, each with its own strengths and limitations. One possibility was that they represented a previously unknown type of microbial colony, vast congregations of bacteria or archaea that had somehow organized themselves into spherical formations. The deep ocean is home to countless species of microorganisms that thrive in extreme conditions, and it's possible that some of these organisms might collaborate to form visible structures. Another theory suggested that the spheres might be chemical precipitates, formed by the unique conditions of the deep ocean floor. The extreme pressure, near-freezing temperatures, and specific chemical composition of deep-sea water could potentially create conditions where certain organic compounds crystallize or aggregate into spherical formations. However, this explanation struggled to account for the apparent biological activity and dynamic behavior observed in the spheres. Perhaps the most exotic theory proposed that the spheres might represent an entirely unknown form of life, organisms so fundamentally different from anything previously discovered that they don't fit into existing categories of biological classification. The deep ocean is still largely unexplored, and it's entirely possible that evolution has produced forms of life that are completely alien to surface-dwelling organisms. The discovery of the fluffy spheres has profound implications for our understanding of life in extreme environments. If these objects prove to be biological in nature, they would represent one of the most unusual ecosystems ever discovered, demonstrating that life can organize itself in ways that we never imagined possible. The spheres exist in conditions that would be instantly lethal to most known forms of life, yet they appear to be thriving in this alien environment. The research into these mysterious objects has also highlighted how little we know about the deep ocean environment. Despite decades of exploration and technological advancement, vast areas of the ocean floor remain as unknown to us as the surface of distant planets. The discovery of the spheres suggests that the deep ocean may harbor phenomena and ecosystems that are completely outside our current understanding of biology and chemistry. The ongoing study of the fluffy spheres represents one of the most intriguing mysteries in modern marine science. Each new observation and analysis seems to raise more questions than it answers, deepening the puzzle rather than solving it. The spheres remain stubbornly resistant to easy classification, existing in a realm somewhere between the biological and the geological that challenges our fundamental understanding of how life and chemistry operate in extreme environments. The implications of the sphere discovery extend beyond simple scientific curiosity. If these objects represent a new form of life, or a previously unknown biological process, they could provide insights into how life might exist on other planets or moons with similarly extreme conditions. The sphere's ability to thrive in the crushing depths of the abyss suggests that life might be possible in environments that we previously considered completely hostile to biological processes. As imaging technology continues to improve and more areas of the deep ocean are explored, scientists hope to gain a better understanding of the sphere's distribution, behavior, and ultimate nature. Advanced chemical analysis techniques and longer-term observation studies may eventually reveal whether these cotton ball-like objects represent a new chapter in our understanding of life on Earth, or whether they're the result of some exotic chemical process that operates only in the most extreme environments on our planet. The fluffy spheres of the abyssal plains have joined the ranks of the ocean's greatest mysteries, phenomena that remind us that our planet still holds secrets that can challenge our most basic assumptions about the natural world. They float through the eternal darkness of the deep ocean, like ghostly remnants of some cosmic event, carrying within their soft white forms the potential to revolutionize our understanding of life itself. As we drift away from these enigmatic cotton balls scattered across the ocean's deepest deserts, carrying with us the image of their ethereal glow against the absolute blackness of the abyss, our journey takes us to a story of human resilience in the face of unimaginable betrayal, where the greatest predator proved to be not a shark or the crushing depths, but the evil that one human can inflict upon another. Story 16. The Girl Who Refused to Drown. Among all the stories of survival at sea, few are as haunting or as inspiring as the tale of an 11-year-old girl who found herself alone on the vast Atlantic Ocean with nothing but a small cork float to keep her alive, drifting through 4 days and nights of unimaginable terror, while the ocean tested every ounce of strength and determination in her young body. This is the story of Terry Jo Duperrault and the nightmare that began as a dream vacation but transformed into one of the most remarkable tales of survival in maritime history. The story begins in November 1961, when the Duperrault family, Arthur and Jean, along with their children Brian, Terry Jo, and Renee, embarked on what was meant to be the adventure of a lifetime. They had chartered the Bluebell, a 60-foot ketch, for a week-long sailing vacation through the crystal-clear waters of the Bahamas. The boat was operated by Julian Harvey, an experienced charter captain with an impeccable reputation and years of experience navigating the sometimes treacherous waters around the Caribbean islands. For the Duperrault family, this charter represented a dream come true, a chance to explore pristine tropical waters, to snorkel over coral reefs teeming with colorful fish, and to experience the freedom and beauty of life under sail. Arthur Duperrault was an optometrist from Wisconsin who had worked hard to provide his family with this special vacation, and the excitement was palpable as they boarded the Bluebell and set sail into the turquoise waters of the Bahamas. But Captain Julian Harvey harbored a dark secret that would soon transform this idyllic family vacation into a nightmare beyond imagination. Beneath his professional exterior lay a man driven by desperation and greed, a man who had decided that murder was preferable to facing the financial ruin that threatened to destroy his carefully constructed life. Harvey had taken out substantial life insurance policies on his wife, Den, who was traveling with the family as part of the crew, and he had conceived a plan so coldly calculated that it defies comprehension. On the night of November 12, 1961, while the Bluebell drifted peacefully under a star-filled sky somewhere northwest of the Berry Islands, Harvey put his monstrous plan into action. Moving through the boat, like a predator stalking prey, he systematically murdered every member of the Duperrault family, as well as his own wife. Arthur, Jean, Brian, and little Renee, all fell victim to Harvey's brutal attack. Their lives ended in moments of terror and confusion as they tried to understand what was happening to them. Terry Jo Duperrault, 11 years old and fast asleep in her cabin, was awakened by sounds that would haunt her nightmares for the rest of her life, the sounds of violence and terror, of her family's last moments, of a trusted adult revealing himself to be a monster. In the darkness of the cabin, with the boat rocking gently on the calm seas, Terry Jo found herself face to face with the man who had just murdered her entire family. What happened next remains burned into Terry Jo's memory as one of the most terrifying moments of her young life. Harvey, perhaps overcome by the magnitude of his crimes, or possibly believing that an 11-year-old girl could never survive to tell the tale, made the decision that would ultimately lead to his own downfall. He left Terry Jo alive. Whether he intended to return and finish what he had started, or whether he simply believed that the ocean would claim her as surely as he had claimed her family, Harvey's decision to spare Terry Jo's life would prove to be the thread that unraveled his entire plan. After opening the seacocks to scuttle the Bluebell and ensure that the evidence of his crimes would disappear beneath the waves, Harvey departed in the boat's dinghy, leaving Terry Jo alone on a sinking vessel surrounded by the bodies of her family. The boat was settling lower in the water with each passing minute, the ocean slowly claiming what Harvey intended to be the final resting place of his victims and the evidence of their murder. In those moments of absolute terror and despair, Terry Jo made a decision that would save her life. She managed to deploy a small cork float that was stored on the boat, a life raft so small and basic that it offered almost no protection from the elements, but which would prove to be her salvation. As the Bluebell disappeared beneath the waves, taking with it the bodies of her family and the last remnants of her former life, Terry Jo found herself alone on the vast Atlantic Ocean with nothing but her courage and an indomitable will to survive. The ordeal that followed tested every limit of human endurance. For 4 days and 4 nights, Terry Jo drifted on the open ocean under the scorching Caribbean sun, with no food, no fresh water, and no shelter from the elements that alternately baked and chilled her small body. The cork float offered minimal buoyancy and no comfort, forcing her to remain constantly vigilant to avoid slipping into the water that surrounded her on all sides. The physical challenges of survival at sea are almost impossible for those who have never experienced them to fully comprehend. Dehydration sets in quickly under the tropical sun, creating a thirst so intense that it becomes an obsession. The salt spray from the waves creates painful sores on exposed skin, while the constant exposure to sun and wind burns and blisters any unprotected areas. The small cork float provided no protection from these elements, leaving Terry Jo completely exposed to the full fury of the marine environment. But perhaps even more challenging than the physical ordeal was the psychological battle that Terry Jo fought during those 4 days alone on the ocean. At 11 years old, she was forced to confront not only the trauma of witnessing unimaginable violence and losing her entire family, but also the growing realization that she might die alone on the endless expanse of water that stretched to the horizon in every direction. The hallucinations that come with severe dehydration began to plague her after the second day, creating visions of rescue that dissolved into cruel mirages as her desperate mind tried to cope with circumstances that would have broken many adults. She saw ships on the horizon that weren't there, heard voices calling her name that existed only in her dehydration-addled brain, and experienced moments of hope, followed by crushing disappointment as reality reasserted itself. Throughout the ordeal, Terry Jo demonstrated a mental toughness and determination that defied her young age. Rather than giving in to despair or panic, she focused on the basic requirements of survival, maintaining her position on the float, conserving her energy, and staying alert for any sign of genuine rescue. Her survival instincts, honed perhaps by a childhood spent outdoors and around water, served her well as she faced challenges that would have overwhelmed many experienced sailors. On the 4th day, when Terry Jo's strength was nearly exhausted and her body was beginning to shut down from dehydration and exposure, her extraordinary ordeal came to an end when she was spotted by the crew of a Greek freighter. The sailors who pulled her from the water could hardly believe what they were seeing: a small girl, barely conscious but still alive, who had somehow survived 4 days alone on the open ocean under conditions that should have killed her within hours. The rescue marked the beginning of Terry Jo's physical recovery, but it also initiated a legal and investigative process that would eventually expose Julian Harvey's crimes and bring justice for the Duperrault family. Harvey had been rescued separately and had spun an elaborate tale about the bluebell catching fire and sinking, claiming that he had tried to save the family but had been unable to do so. His story might have been believed if not for Terry Jo's survival and her eventual testimony about what really happened that night. When confronted with Terry Jo's account of the murders, and faced with the collapse of his carefully constructed alibi, Harvey chose suicide rather than facing trial for his crimes. His death ended any possibility of learning the full details of his motivation or the exact sequence of events that led to the deaths of 5 innocent people, but it also confirmed Terry Jo's testimony and provided a form of justice for the family that had been so brutally murdered. Terry Jo's recovery, both physical and emotional, would take years of therapy and support from the extended family members who took her in after the tragedy. The trauma of witnessing her family's murder and surviving alone at sea left scars that would never completely heal, but it also revealed a strength of character that would serve her throughout her life. She grew up to become an advocate for victims of violence and a living testament to the human capacity for survival and resilience. The story of Terry Jo Duperrault serves as both an inspiration and a cautionary tale. Her survival demonstrates the extraordinary courage and determination that humans are capable of displaying when faced with seemingly impossible circumstances, while also highlighting the importance of trusting our instincts when something feels wrong. The Duperrault family's trust in Julian Harvey was natural and appropriate. He was an experienced captain with an excellent reputation, but his betrayal of that trust represents one of the most heinous crimes in maritime history. The physical evidence of Terry Jo's ordeal, the cork float that saved her life, the medical records documenting her condition when rescued, and the official Coast Guard investigation reports all serve as testament to the reality of her incredible survival story. Her memoir, Alone, Orphaned on the Ocean, provides a detailed account of both the tragedy and her remarkable survival, offering insights into the psychological and physical challenges of surviving alone at sea. The case also highlighted important lessons about maritime safety and the vulnerability of charter passengers to those who would abuse their trust. Terry Jo's survival and testimony led to increased scrutiny of charter boat operations and improved background checking procedures for those licensed to carry passengers in commercial vessels. Perhaps most importantly, Terry Jo's story stands as a reminder that even in the darkest moments, when evil seems to have triumphed and all hope appears lost, the human spirit has the capacity to endure and overcome. An 11-year-old girl's refusal to give up in the face of unimaginable circumstances serves as an inspiration to anyone facing their own seemingly impossible challenges. As we drift away from Terry Jo's remarkable tale of survival and courage, carrying with us the image of a small girl's determination to live despite losing everything, our journey takes us to the mysterious depths, where evolution has crafted creatures so alien and strange that they seem to belong to another world entirely, beings that thrive in pressures that would crush us instantly, and in darkness that has never known the touch of sunlight. Story 17. The Ghost Fish of the Deep. In the crushing depths of the Pacific Ocean, where the pressure would instantly liquefy any surface-dwelling creature, and where the darkness is so complete that evolution has rendered eyes not just useless but absent entirely, there exists a realm populated by beings so alien that encountering them feels like making first contact with life from another planet. These are creatures that have evolved along paths so divergent from surface life that they challenge our very understanding of what it means to be alive. Such was the revelation that awaited researchers in 2021 when their deep-sea trawl brought up something from the abyssal depths that seemed to defy every category of known marine life. At 3,000 feet below the surface, where the weight of water above creates pressures that exceed 130 times that of sea level, their nets captured a creature so otherworldly that the first scientists to examine it questioned whether they were looking at something that had evolved on Earth at all. The slickhead fish that emerged from the depths measured an impressive 4.6 feet in length, but its size was far less remarkable than its utterly alien appearance. This was not a fish in any sense that surface dwellers would recognize. It was something that seemed to have been designed by an intelligence that followed completely different rules of biology and physics. The creature's body was almost entirely translucent, its flesh so clear and gelatinous that internal organs were visible through skin that appeared to be made of living glass. Most unsettling of all was the creature's complete lack of eyes. Where other fish have organs of sight, the slickhead possessed only smooth, unbroken skin that spoke of millions of years of evolution in an environment where light has never existed. But perhaps even stranger was the fact that despite this absence of eyes, the creature's skull was clearly visible through its transparent skin, a ghostly framework of bone that seemed to float within the gelatinous mass of its body, like the skeleton of some prehistoric beast preserved in amber. The name slickhead comes from the characteristic smooth, scaleless head that gives these deep-sea dwellers their distinctive appearance. But this particular specimen represented something far more extraordinary than the typical members of its family. The Alopocephalidae family, to which slickheads belong, includes some of the most bizarre and alien-looking creatures in the ocean. But this individual pushed the boundaries of strange, even by deep-sea standards. The creature's translucent body revealed internal structures that functioned according to rules that seemed to defy normal physiology. Its digestive system was visible as a dark tube running through the center of its body, adapted to process the limited food sources available in the deep ocean. The fish's liver, enlarged to enormous proportions relative to its body size, appeared as a dark mass that served as both energy storage and processing center for the harsh chemical environment of the deep sea. What made this discovery particularly remarkable was not just the creature's alien appearance, but its remarkable adaptation to an environment that represents one of the most extreme habitats on Earth. At 3,000 feet below the surface, the pressure is so intense that it would crush a human body in milliseconds. Yet this gelatinous being moved through these depths with the same ease that surface fish navigate shallow coral reefs. The slickhead's feeding strategy reflects the harsh realities of life in the food-scarce environment of the deep ocean. These creatures are specialized predators of jellyfish and other gelatinous organisms that drift down from the more productive waters above. Their entire anatomy has been shaped by millions of years of evolution to efficiently capture and digest prey that is itself mostly water, extracting every possible calorie from food sources that would provide little nutrition to surface-dwelling predators. The creature's mouth, when examined in detail, revealed another marvel of deep-sea adaptation. Unlike the powerful jaws of surface predators designed for tearing flesh and crushing bone, the slickhead's mouth was a delicate instrument designed for engulfing soft-bodied prey whole. The jaw structure was so delicate and flexible that it seemed almost liquid, capable of expanding to enormous proportions to accommodate prey items that might be larger than the fish's normal body width. The transparency of the slickhead's body serves multiple purposes in the alien environment of the deep ocean. In a world where bioluminescent creatures create their own light, being invisible provides a crucial advantage for both predator and prey. The fish's translucent body allows it to blend seamlessly with the dark water around it, making it nearly impossible for prey to detect until it's too late, while also providing camouflage from the larger predators that patrol the depths. Perhaps most remarkably, the slickhead's body contains specialized organs that allow it to survive the crushing pressure of the deep ocean without being compressed into a fraction of its normal size. These adaptations include gas-filled chambers that are perfectly calibrated to maintain their volume at depth, and proteins that function normally even under pressures that would denature the proteins of surface-dwelling organisms. The discovery of this particular slickhead specimen highlighted the incredible fragility of deep-sea life when brought to the surface. The creature's gelatinous body, so perfectly adapted to the high-pressure environment of the deep ocean, began to deteriorate almost immediately when exposed to surface pressures. The gas-filled organs that maintained its shape at depth expanded and ruptured, and the delicate tissue structures that functioned perfectly under crushing pressure became unstable in the lower-pressure environment of the surface. This fragility explains why deep-sea creatures like the slickhead are so rarely seen intact, and why our understanding of life in the deep ocean remains so limited. The very act of bringing these creatures to the surface for study destroys many of the characteristics that make them so perfectly adapted to their extreme environment. Scientists must rely on brief observations made during the ascent, or on specialized pressure chambers that can maintain deep-sea conditions during the specimen's journey to the surface. The slickhead's slow metabolism represents another crucial adaptation to life in the food-scarce environment of the deep ocean. These creatures can survive for months without feeding, their bodies operating at such a reduced rate that they consume energy at a fraction of the rate required by surface-dwelling fish. This extreme energy conservation allows them to survive in an environment where encounters with prey may be separated by weeks or even months. The reproductive strategies of slickheads remain largely mysterious, as does almost every aspect of their life cycle beyond basic feeding and survival. Scientists believe that these creatures may have extremely long lifespans and very slow reproductive rates, adaptations that help them survive in an environment where every aspect of life must be carefully calibrated to conserve energy. Some researchers speculate that slickheads may be capable of reproducing without the need for finding mates, though this remains unproven. The study of creatures like the slickhead has revealed that the deep ocean supports a level of biodiversity that rivals any ecosystem on Earth, despite the harsh conditions that make life there seem almost impossible. Each new specimen brought up from the depths reveals adaptations and biological innovations that challenge our understanding of what life can achieve under extreme conditions. The slickhead fish serves as a powerful reminder of how little we know about the creatures that inhabit the vast majority of our planet's living space. The deep ocean covers more than 95% of the Earth's habitable volume, yet we have explored less than 5% of this vast realm. Every expedition to the deep sea reveals new species, new adaptations, and new mysteries that remind us that our own planet is still largely alien to us. The transparent ghostfish of the Pacific depths represents one of evolution's most successful experiments in adapting to extreme conditions. Its ability to thrive in an environment that would instantly kill any surface-dwelling creature demonstrates the incredible flexibility of life and the endless creativity of evolutionary processes. The slickhead has solved problems that human technology still struggles with: how to remain functional under crushing pressure, how to see without eyes, how to find food in a desert. The creature's alien appearance serves as a window into what life might look like on other worlds where conditions are equally extreme. The adaptations that allow the slickhead to survive in the deep ocean, the transparent body, the enlarged liver, the specialized pressure-resistant organs, might be similar to the innovations that allow life to exist on planets with crushing atmospheres or in the depths of alien oceans. As imaging technology continues to advance and deep-sea exploration becomes more sophisticated, scientists hope to learn more about the slickhead and other deep-sea creatures while they're still in their natural environment. New techniques that allow for detailed observation at depth, without the need to bring specimens to the surface, are revealing behaviors and characteristics that were previously unknown. The slickhead fish reminds us that our planet is still full of aliens, not visitors from other worlds, but creatures so perfectly adapted to extreme environments that they might as well have evolved on different planets entirely. They swim through the crushing darkness of the deep ocean like living ghosts, carrying within their transparent bodies the secrets of survival in Earth's most alien realm. As we rise from the depths where ghostly fish swim through eternal darkness, carrying with us the image of transparent bodies and visible skulls floating in the abyss, our journey takes us to a place where mystery and tragedy intersect, where human disappearance on the seemingly safe waters of a luxury cruise liner reminds us that even in our modern connected world, people can vanish without a trace. Story 18. The Woman Who Vanished at Dawn. There are certain mysteries that refuse to remain buried, cases that haunt investigators and families for decades because they represent something that shouldn't be possible in our modern connected world. In an age of surveillance cameras, satellite tracking, and instant communication, the idea that a person can simply disappear without a trace seems like something from a bygone era. Yet on March 24th, 1998, in the warm waters of the Caribbean aboard a luxury cruise ship filled with hundreds of passengers and crew, a young woman named Amy Lynn Bradley vanished as completely as if she had been swept away by the ocean itself. Amy Lynn Bradley was 23 years old, a vibrant young woman from Petersburg, Virginia, who was enjoying what should have been a perfect family vacation aboard the Royal Caribbean cruise ship Rhapsody of the Seas. The ship was everything that modern cruise vessels promise to be: a floating resort complete with restaurants, entertainment venues, swimming pools, and all the amenities that make a Caribbean cruise one of the most popular vacation choices for American families. Amy was traveling with her parents, Ron and Iva Bradley, and her brother Brad, on a week-long cruise that had taken them through some of the most beautiful waters in the Caribbean. The family had been having a wonderful time together, enjoying the ship's activities during the day and the entertainment offerings in the evening. Amy, young and outgoing, had made friends among both passengers and crew members, as was her nature. The night of March 23rd had been like any other evening on the cruise. The family had dinner together, enjoyed some of the ship's entertainment, and spent time relaxing on deck under the Caribbean stars. Amy was known to be a strong swimmer, and an independent young woman who was comfortable exploring the ship on her own, so when she decided to stay up later than her parents to enjoy the warm evening air, no one was concerned. The events of that final night remained frustratingly unclear, pieced together from fragmentary witness accounts and the desperate recollections of family members trying to reconstruct Amy's last hours. What is known is that Amy spent part of the evening socializing with other passengers and crew members in various parts of the ship. She was seen in the ship's disco at one of the bars, and later walking around the deck areas as the ship made its way through the calm Caribbean waters. At approximately 5:30 a.m. on March 24th, Amy's father, Ron Bradley, woke up and stepped out onto the balcony of their cabin for some fresh air. The ship was anchored off the coast of Curaçao, preparing for a day of shore excursions, and the Caribbean dawn was just beginning to paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. From the balcony, Ron could see Amy sleeping peacefully on a lounge chair on the cabin's private deck, and he returned to bed reassured that his daughter was safe and nearby. When the family woke up at 6 a.m. to prepare for their planned shore excursion, Amy was gone. Her shoes were still on the deck where she had left them. Her cigarettes and lighter remained on the table beside the lounge chair, but Amy herself had vanished without a trace. There was no sign of a struggle, no indication of where she might have gone, and no explanation for how a young woman could disappear from a private balcony several stories above the ocean in the space of 30 minutes. The initial response from the ship's crew was frustratingly inadequate, reflecting policies and procedures that seemed designed more to avoid disrupting the crew's schedule than to conduct a thorough search for a missing passenger. The crew suggested that Amy might have simply gone to another part of the ship, perhaps to get coffee or to watch the sunrise from a different location. They seemed reluctant to acknowledge that a passenger could actually be missing, as if admitting the possibility would somehow make it real. As the hours passed and Amy failed to appear for the planned shore excursion, the Bradley family's concern turned to panic. They had searched every accessible area of the ship, asked other passengers if they had seen Amy, and pleaded with the crew to conduct a more systematic search. But the ship's response remained frustratingly limited, hampered by procedures that seemed more concerned with maintaining the crew's schedule than with finding a missing passenger. The search efforts that were eventually mounted revealed the inherent challenges of investigating a disappearance aboard a cruise ship. The vessel was essentially a floating city with thousands of potential hiding places, multiple levels, and areas that were restricted to passengers. The ship's security cameras, while extensive, did not provide complete coverage of all areas, and much of the footage from the relevant time period was either unclear or showed nothing unusual. What made Amy's disappearance particularly puzzling was the apparent impossibility of leaving the ship undetected. The Rhapsody of the Seas was anchored in controlled waters near Curaçao, with limited access to shore and security procedures designed to prevent passengers from leaving or boarding without proper documentation. The ship's manifest systems tracked passenger movements on and off the vessel, and there was no record of Amy leaving the ship through any official channel. The investigation that followed Amy's disappearance was hampered by jurisdictional complexities that plague crimes aboard cruise ships in international waters. The ship was registered in Norway. The incident occurred in waters off the Netherlands Antilles, and the victim was an American citizen. This complex legal situation meant that multiple agencies had potential jurisdiction over the case, but none had clear authority to conduct the kind of comprehensive investigation that the disappearance demanded. FBI agents eventually became involved in the case, conducting interviews with passengers and crew members and analyzing the available evidence. Their investigation revealed a disturbing pattern of conflicting accounts and missing information that made it difficult to establish a clear timeline of Amy's final hours. Some witnesses reported seeing Amy in the company of crew members during the evening, while others claimed to have seen her alone in various parts of the ship. Perhaps most troubling were the reports that emerged in the months and years following Amy's disappearance, alleged sightings of her in various locations throughout the Caribbean. Some of these reports came from tourists who claimed to have seen a woman matching Amy's description in Curaçao, Barbados, and other Caribbean islands. Several of these witnesses reported that the woman they saw appeared to be in distress or seemed to be under some form of control by male companions. The most disturbing of these alleged sightings suggested that Amy might have been the victim of human trafficking, forced into prostitution in the Caribbean sex trade. This theory gained credibility when investigators learned about the organized criminal networks that operate in the region, often targeting young women who could be forced into sexual slavery. The proximity of the cruise ship to areas known for human trafficking activities raised the possibility that Amy's disappearance was not accidental, but the result of a carefully planned abduction. Advances in DNA technology and digital investigation techniques have been applied to Amy's case over the years, but the passage of time has made physical evidence increasingly difficult to obtain and analyze. The cruise ship continued operating for years after Amy's disappearance, with thousands of passengers and crew members passing through areas where evidence might have been present. The Caribbean waters where she vanished have been searched repeatedly, but the ocean's vastness makes comprehensive coverage impossible. The Bradley family has never given up hope of finding answers about Amy's fate, maintaining a website and offering substantial rewards for information leading to her discovery. They have worked with private investigators, consulted with experts in human trafficking, and pursued every lead that has emerged over the years. Their tireless efforts have kept Amy's case in the public eye and have led to increased awareness of the vulnerabilities that can exist aboard cruise ships. The case has also highlighted significant shortcomings in cruise ship security procedures and emergency response protocols. Amy's disappearance occurred during an era when cruise lines were less transparent about onboard incidents and had fewer comprehensive security measures in place. The tragedy led to calls for improved passenger tracking systems, enhanced security cameras, and better coordination with law enforcement agencies when passengers go missing. The investigation into Amy's disappearance revealed troubling information about some crew members aboard the Rhapsody of the Seas, including individuals with criminal backgrounds who had access to passenger areas of the ship. This discovery raised questions about the cruise line's screening procedures and highlighted the potential dangers that can exist when inadequate background checks allow unsuitable individuals to work in positions of trust aboard passenger vessels. The emotional toll of Amy's disappearance on her family has been profound and lasting. Her parents and brother have spent over 2 decades searching for answers, following up on leads, and advocating for improved cruise ship safety measures. Their persistence has kept the case active and has provided hope that someday the truth about what happened to Amy will finally be revealed. Amy's case has become a symbol of the vulnerabilities that can exist even in seemingly safe environments like cruise ships. Her disappearance serves as a reminder that tragedy can strike anywhere, and that even in the middle of a family vacation surrounded by hundreds of other people, someone can vanish without explanation. The case has inspired other families of missing persons to continue their searches and has highlighted the importance of never giving up hope even when investigations seem to reach dead ends. The ongoing mystery of Amy Lynn Bradley's disappearance continues to generate new theories and investigations more than 2 decades after she vanished from the Rhapsody of the Seas. Each new piece of technology, each advance in investigative techniques, and each credible sighting report offers the possibility that the truth about her fate might finally be revealed. Until that day comes, Amy's story remains one of the most haunting, unsolved mysteries of the modern era. As we drift away from the troubling mystery of Amy's disappearance, carrying with us the image of empty shoes on a cruise ship balcony and the endless questions that have haunted her family for decades, our journey takes us to one of nature's most remarkable and mysterious migrations, an epic journey that spans thousands of miles through the ocean's depths, guided by instincts we are only beginning to understand. Story 19. The Ancient Navigators of the Deep. In the vast expanse of the Atlantic Ocean, where currents carry the memories of continents and the darkness of the deep holds secrets that predate human civilization, there unfolds one of the most remarkable and mysterious journeys in the natural world. It is an epic migration that spans thousands of miles, crosses ocean basins, and follows routes that have remained unchanged for millions of years, yet has only recently been witnessed by human eyes through the miracle of modern satellite technology. This is the story of the European eel, a creature so perfectly adapted to its dual life in fresh water and the open ocean that it has become one of nature's most accomplished long-distance travelers. For centuries, the eel's life cycle remained one of biology's greatest mysteries, a puzzle that confounded scientists from Aristotle to modern marine biologists, challenging our understanding of how creatures navigate the vast emptiness of the ocean to find their way home to spawning grounds they have never seen. The mystery begins in the rivers, lakes, and streams of Europe, where European eels spend the majority of their adult lives in an existence that seems entirely separate from their oceanic origins. These remarkable creatures can live for decades in fresh water, growing slowly and steadily as they feed and mature in environments that range from the pristine mountain streams of Scandinavia to the murky canals of industrial cities. For most of their lives, European eels appear to be ordinary freshwater fish, distinguished mainly by their serpentine bodies and their remarkable ability to survive in almost any aquatic environment. They can live in water that would kill other fish species, tolerate extreme temperature variations, and even survive brief periods out of water by breathing through their skin. These adaptations make them one of the most successful fish species in Europe, but they also mask the incredible secret of their true nature. The transformation that marks the beginning of the eel's final journey is as dramatic as it is mysterious. After spending anywhere from 5 to 20 years in fresh water, mature eels undergo a remarkable metamorphosis that prepares them for an epic journey they have never undertaken before. Their eyes enlarge dramatically, becoming adapted for vision in the deep ocean. Their skin darkens to a silver color that provides camouflage in open water, and their digestive systems shut down completely, indicating that they will not feed again during the months-long journey ahead. This transformation, known as the silver eel stage, marks the beginning of one of the most remarkable migrations in the natural world. The eels abandon the freshwater environments where they have spent their adult lives and begin a journey downstream toward the ocean, following river systems with an urgency and determination that suggests they are responding to biological imperatives millions of years in the making. Once the silver eels reach the ocean, they disappear into the blue depths, beginning a journey that has remained largely invisible to human observation until very recently. For over a century, scientists could only theorize about where these eels went and how they found their way across thousands of miles of open ocean to their spawning grounds in the Sargasso Sea, a region of the Atlantic Ocean east of Bermuda that has become legendary among marine biologists as one of the ocean's most mysterious places. The breakthrough that finally allowed scientists to track this incredible journey came in 2022, when researchers successfully attached satellite tags to 5 European eels captured near the Azores Islands. For the first time in history, human technology was advanced enough to follow these remarkable navigators as they made their way across the Atlantic Ocean, diving to depths of 2,000 feet and traveling distances that boggled the minds of even the most experienced marine biologists. The satellite tracking revealed a journey of almost unimaginable scope and precision. The tagged eels swam steadily westward across the Atlantic, maintaining courses so accurate that they seemed to be following invisible highways through the ocean depths. They dove deep during the day, sometimes reaching depths where the pressure would crush most surface-dwelling creatures, then rose toward the surface at night, following patterns that suggested they were using a combination of celestial navigation, magnetic field detection, and chemical cues to maintain their heading. The stamina displayed by these migrating eels defied every expectation that scientists had about fish, physiology, and endurance. Swimming continuously for months without feeding, the eels covered distances of over 3,000 miles while maintaining the energy reserves necessary to complete their spawning activities once they reached their destination. Their bodies had become perfectly calibrated biological machines, capable of converting stored fat into the energy needed for one of the longest migrations undertaken by any marine animal. Perhaps most remarkably, the tracking data revealed that the eels' navigation was so precise that they were following routes that individual eels had never traveled before. Unlike birds or mammals that might learn migration routes from their parents or other experienced members of their species, European eels make their spawning migration only once, at the end of their lives, with no opportunity to learn the route from others. Yet somehow, they navigate across thousands of miles of open ocean with accuracy that rivals the most sophisticated GPS systems. The Sargasso Sea, their ultimate destination, is itself one of the ocean's most mysterious regions. This vast area of the North Atlantic is characterized by its floating mats of sargassum seaweed, its deep blue waters, and its role as a spawning ground for multiple species of eels from both sides of the Atlantic. The waters of the Sargasso Sea possess unique characteristics, specific temperature ranges, salinity levels, and current patterns that make it an ideal nursery for eel larvae. But how adult eels are able to locate this region across thousands of miles of seemingly featureless ocean remains one of biology's greatest mysteries. The spawning behavior of European eels in the Sargasso Sea has never been directly observed by scientists, adding another layer of mystery to their remarkable life cycle. The adults arrive in the deep waters of the Sargasso Sea, spawn in the darkness of the ocean depths, and then die, their bodies sinking into the abyss and their genetic legacy entrusted to microscopic larvae that will somehow find their way back across the Atlantic to the rivers of Europe. The larval stage of the European eel's life cycle represents yet another chapter in this ongoing mystery. The larvae, called leptocephali, are so different from adult eels that they were originally classified as separate species. These transparent leaf-shaped creatures drift in the ocean currents for up to 3 years, gradually making their way across the Atlantic Ocean in a journey that is the inverse of their parents' final migration. The navigation abilities of these microscopic larvae are every bit as mysterious as those of the adults. Somehow, these tiny creatures that lack any form of sophisticated nervous system are able to find their way from the Sargasso Sea to the coastal waters of Europe, a journey that requires them to locate river mouths and estuaries that they have never seen before. The fact that they consistently arrive at appropriate freshwater environments suggests that they possess navigation abilities that we are only beginning to understand. The transformation of leptocephali larvae into glass eels, the juvenile form that enters European rivers, represents another remarkable metamorphosis in the eel's complex life cycle. The transparent larvae gradually develop into small, eel-like creatures that begin the freshwater phase of their lives, starting a cycle that has been repeated for millions of years with clockwork precision. The European eel's migration has been known to science since ancient times, but it has only been fully appreciated in recent decades, as researchers have begun to understand the incredible challenges that these creatures overcome during their epic journeys. Aristotle himself was puzzled by eels, noting that they seem to appear spontaneously in freshwater environments without any obvious means of reproduction, leading to centuries of speculation about their mysterious life cycle. The satellite tracking studies of 2022 have revolutionized our understanding of eel migration, but they have also raised new questions about how these remarkable creatures accomplish their navigational feats. The precision of their oceanic navigation suggests that they possess sensory abilities that far exceed anything that current science can fully explain. They may be detecting magnetic fields, following chemical gradients, using celestial cues, or employing some combination of navigation methods that we have yet to discover. The conservation implications of understanding eel migration are profound. European eel populations have declined dramatically in recent decades due to habitat destruction, overfishing, and barriers to migration such as dams and pollution. The species is now considered critically endangered, and the loss of these remarkable navigators would represent not just an ecological tragedy, but the disappearance of one of nature's most extraordinary migrations. The mystery of eel navigation has also captured the imagination of researchers studying animal behavior and migration patterns in other species. The ability of eels to navigate across ocean basins using only innate biological programming offers insights into how evolution can produce navigation systems that rival or exceed human technology. Understanding how eels accomplish their remarkable journeys could lead to advances in autonomous navigation systems and robotic guidance technologies. The European eel's epic migration reminds us that our planet is still home to phenomena that challenge our understanding of what life can achieve. These serpentine navigators carry within their bodies the genetic programming for one of the most remarkable journeys in the natural world, following routes that predate human civilization and demonstrating navigation abilities that we are only beginning to comprehend. As we follow the silver eels on their final journey through the dark depths of the Atlantic, guided by instincts older than memory towards spawning grounds they have never seen, we're reminded that the ocean remains a realm of mystery, where ancient rhythms continue to play out on scales that dwarf human experience. The eel's migration is more than just a biological phenomenon, it's a connection to the deep time of evolution, a reminder that some of nature's most remarkable achievements happen far from human observation in the vast blue wilderness of the open sea. As we complete our journey through the mysterious migration of the European eel, carrying with us the image of these remarkable navigators crossing ocean basins, guided by instincts we barely understand, we find ourselves at the end of our exploration into the ocean's deepest mysteries, but with the knowledge that countless more secrets await discovery in the vast blue depths that cover most of our planet. Story 20. The Living Fossil of the Twilight Zone. In the twilight depths of the ocean, where sunlight fades to memory and the boundary between day and night becomes meaningless, there exists a creature so ancient and so perfectly adapted to its mysterious realm that encountering it alive feels like stepping back in time to witness a living piece of evolutionary history. This is the story of the ram's horn squid, a diminutive cephalopod whose very existence challenges our understanding of how life can persist unchanged for millions of years in the ocean's most challenging environments. The ram's horn squid, scientifically known as Spirula spirula, carries within its tiny body one of the most beautiful and mysterious structures in the marine world. A spiral shell that has been washing up on beaches around the globe for centuries, puzzling beachcombers and scientists alike with its perfect geometric form. For generations, these delicate white spirals were among the ocean's greatest mysteries, appearing regularly on shorelines worldwide, yet never accompanied by any sign of the creature that created them. The shells themselves are masterpieces of natural engineering, consisting of perfectly formed chambers arranged in a tight spiral that resembles a tiny ram's horn or an ancient ammonite fossil. Each chamber represents a stage in the squid's growth, added incrementally as the creature develops, creating a buoyancy control system so sophisticated that it allows this small cephalopod to hover motionless in the water column like a tiny submarine, perfectly balanced between the surface and the abyss. For centuries, these shells were classified among the world's great biological puzzles. They appeared to be fossils from some ancient sea, yet they were clearly modern, fresh shells washed up on beaches regularly, their pristine condition indicating that whatever creature created them was still alive somewhere in the ocean's depths. Some scientists theorized that they might be the remains of a deep-sea mollusk, while others suggested they could be the egg cases of some unknown marine animal. The mystery deepened when intact specimens of the ram's horn squid were finally captured in deep-sea nets, revealing a creature so bizarre and so perfectly adapted to life in the ocean's twilight zone that it seemed to belong to another world entirely. Unlike any other known cephalopod, the ram's horn squid possessed an internal shell, that same spiral structure that had been puzzling scientists for decades, housed within its soft body like a tiny nautilus that had somehow evolved in reverse. The breakthrough that finally revealed the ram's horn squid in its natural habitat came in 2020. When the Schmidt Ocean Institute's remotely operated vehicle, Sebastian captured the first high-definition footage of a living Spirula spirula in the waters near the Great Barrier Reef. The images that emerged from that encounter would rewrite textbooks and provide scientists with their first glimpse of how this ancient creature actually lives and behaves in the wild. The footage revealed a creature of otherworldly beauty and bizarre adaptation, hovering in the dark water at a depth of 2,790 feet, with an elegance that seemed to defy the harsh realities of deep-sea existence. The squid measured barely an inch in length, its translucent body glowing with bioluminescent organs that pulsed in patterns that seemed almost musical in their rhythm. But most remarkably, the creature's posture was unlike anything scientists had ever seen in a cephalopod. It hung head down in the water with its tentacles pointing toward the surface, as if gravity worked differently in its deep-sea realm. This unusual orientation, which initially puzzled researchers, actually represents a perfect adaptation to the ram's horn squid's unique hunting strategy and buoyancy system. The spiral shell within its body acts as a sophisticated ballast system, with each chamber filled with gas at precisely the right pressure to maintain neutral buoyancy at the squid's preferred depth. By hanging head down, the squid can use its tentacles to capture small prey that drifts down from the more productive waters above, while its bioluminescent organs create light displays that may attract prey or confuse predators. The ram's horn squid's bioluminescence is particularly remarkable, consisting of specialized organs called photophores that can produce brilliant flashes of blue-green light. These organs are arranged along the squid's body in patterns that create complex light displays visible even in the high-definition footage captured by deep-sea cameras. Scientists believe these light shows serve multiple purposes. They may be used to communicate with other members of the species, to confuse predators by creating a dazzling distraction, or to attract the small crustaceans and fish larvae that make up the squid's diet. The evolutionary history of the ram's horn squid reads like a story of survival against impossible odds. Genetic analysis suggests that this species has remained virtually unchanged for tens of millions of years, making it a true living fossil that has somehow maintained its ancient form while the world around it transformed completely. During the time that Spirula spirula has existed in its current form, continents have shifted, ice ages have come and gone, and countless other species have evolved and gone extinct. This remarkable evolutionary stability is particularly puzzling given the dynamic nature of the ocean environment, where the ram's horn squid lives. The mesopelagic zone, that vast middle layer of the ocean between 200 and 1,000 meters deep, is one of the most challenging environments on Earth, characterized by crushing pressure, near freezing temperatures, and a food web that depends entirely on the constant rain of organic matter falling from the productive surface waters above. The squid's feeding strategy reflects the harsh realities of life in this food-limited environment. Unlike their shallow water relatives that are active hunters capable of pursuing fast-moving prey, ram's horn squids are patient predators that conserve energy by remaining nearly motionless while waiting for food to come to them. Their tentacles are equipped with tiny hooks, rather than the suction cups found on most other squids, allowing them to snare small, delicate prey without expending the energy required for active hunting. The reproductive behavior of ram's horn squids remains largely mysterious, as does almost every aspect of their life cycle beyond their basic feeding and buoyancy adaptations. Scientists believe that, like many deep-sea creatures, they likely have extended lifespans and reproduce infrequently, strategies that help them survive in an environment where encounters with potential mates may be separated by vast distances and long periods of time. The internal shell that gives the ram's horn squid its name represents one of the most sophisticated buoyancy control systems ever evolved by a marine animal. Unlike the gas-filled swim bladders used by most fish, or the water-filled chambers of nautilus shells, the ram's horn squid's spiral shell contains a precise mixture of gases and liquids that can be adjusted to maintain perfect neutral buoyancy across a range of depths. This system allows the squid to hover motionless in the water column without expending energy on swimming, a crucial adaptation in an environment where every calorie must be carefully conserved. The mystery of how these delicate shells end up on beaches around the world has finally been solved through the study of ocean currents and the squid's life cycle. When ram's horn squids die, their bodies decompose quickly in the warm surface waters, but their shells are remarkably durable and buoyant. The empty shells float to the surface and are carried by ocean currents across vast distances, eventually washing up on shores thousands of miles from where the squids originally lived. This global distribution of shells has made the ram's horn squid inadvertently famous among beachcombers and shell collectors, even though most people who find the beautiful spiral shells have no idea what creature created them. The shells have inspired artists, jewelers, and craftspeople for centuries, their perfect mathematical spirals serving as models for human attempts to replicate nature's geometric precision. The discovery of living ram's horn squids in their natural habitat has provided scientists with new insights into how evolution can produce solutions to the challenges of deep-sea life that are completely different from anything found in surface environments. The squid's combination of bioluminescence, sophisticated buoyancy control, and energy-conserving hunting strategies represents a masterclass in evolutionary adaptation to extreme conditions. The fragility of ram's horn squids when brought to the surface highlights one of the fundamental challenges of studying deep-sea life. These creatures are so perfectly adapted to the high-pressure, low-temperature environment of the deep ocean that they cannot survive the journey to surface conditions. The gas-filled chambers of their shells expand and rupture when the pressure decreases, and their delicate tissues, evolved to function under crushing pressure, become unstable in the lower pressure environment of the surface. This means that most of what scientists know about ram's horn squids must be learned through brief observations made during deep-sea dives or through the analysis of specimens that have been damaged by the collection process. The 2020 footage captured by the Schmidt Ocean Institute represents some of the most detailed observations ever made of these creatures in their natural state, providing a rare window into the behavior and ecology of one of the ocean's most mysterious inhabitants. The study of ram's horn squids has also provided insights into the evolution of cephalopods as a group. These ancient creatures represent a branch of cephalopod evolution that diverged from the lineage that produced modern squids and octopuses millions of years ago, yet they have maintained characteristics that may be similar to the earliest cephalopods. Studying their anatomy and behavior helps scientists understand how the remarkable intelligence and adaptability of modern cephalopods first evolved. The ram's horn squid's story is also a reminder of how much we still don't know about life in the ocean's middle depths. Despite being one of the largest habitats on Earth, the mesopelagic zone remains largely unexplored and poorly understood. Every new expedition to these depths reveals new species and new adaptations that challenge our understanding of what life can achieve under extreme conditions. The recent footage of living ram's horn squids has also sparked new interest in their conservation status and the threats they may face from human activities. Like many deep-sea species, ram's horn squids are likely vulnerable to changes in ocean temperature and chemistry caused by climate change. Their specialized adaptations that make them so perfectly suited to their current environment may also make them particularly susceptible to environmental changes. The mystery of the ram's horn squid serves as a perfect metaphor for the ocean's endless capacity to surprise and inspire us. For centuries, their beautiful shells washed up on beaches around the world like messages from an unknown realm, tantalizing clues to the existence of creatures that seem to exist at the very edge of possibility. The recent discovery of these creatures in their natural habitat represents not an end to the mystery, but a new beginning. The first chapter in our understanding of how life persists and thrives in some of the most challenging environments on our planet. The ram's horn squid reminds us that evolution is the greatest artist of all, capable of creating beauty and functionality in perfect harmony. Their spiral shells represent mathematical precision that rivals human engineering, while their bioluminescent displays create art that surpasses anything in our galleries. They are living proof that the ocean's depths hold wonders that can humble our technology and inspire our imagination. As we drift away from the twilight realm where ram's horn squids hang suspended like tiny living submarines, their spiral shells gleaming in the darkness, and their bioluminescent organs painting temporary masterpieces of light, we carry with us the reminder that some of nature's most beautiful creations exist in the most unlikely places, waiting for the right moment to reveal their secrets to those patient enough to search for them in the endless blue depths of our mysterious ocean. As we surface from our exploration of the ram's horn squid's ancient realm, we transition to our final story, a tale that brings us full circle to the surface waters, where human tragedy and ocean mystery intersect in ways that remind us that even in our modern connected world, the sea remains capable of keeping its most haunting secrets. Story 21: The Living Galaxy of the Deep. In the remote waters off Western Australia, where the continental shelf drops away into the vast blue emptiness of the Indian Ocean, there exists a realm where the very definitions of what constitutes a single living organism are challenged by creatures so extraordinary they seem to belong to the realm of science fiction rather than natural history. It was in these waters in 2020 that researchers encountered something that would fundamentally challenge our understanding of life itself, a discovery so remarkable that it forced scientists to reconsider the very nature of individuality, cooperation, and survival in the ocean's depths. The creature they discovered was neither fish nor jellyfish, neither plant nor any other category of life that most people would recognize. Instead, it was something far more remarkable, a colonial organism known as a siphonophore, but one of such unprecedented size and complexity that it shattered every existing record for marine life. Stretching across the ocean like a living galaxy, this incredible being measured over 150 feet in length, making it potentially the longest creature ever recorded on Earth. To understand the true wonder of this discovery, imagine trying to grasp the concept of a creature that is simultaneously one organism and thousands of organisms, a being that exists as a perfect collaboration between countless individual parts that have given up their independence to become components of something greater than any of them could be alone. This is the reality of siphonophores, some of nature's most sophisticated examples of collective existence. The giant siphonophore, discovered by the Schmidt Ocean Institute's research vessel Falkor, appeared on their screens like a vision from an alien world. Floating gracefully at a depth of 2,000 feet in the Ningaloo Canyons, the creature resembled a massive underwater spiral, its translucent body forming elegant curves that seemed to dance through the water with movements too fluid and purposeful to be driven by mere ocean currents. What made this sighting truly extraordinary was not just the creature's immense size, but the ethereal beauty of its form and movement. The siphonophore glowed with its own bioluminescent light, creating patterns that pulsed and shifted along its incredible length like a slow-motion fireworks display taking place in the eternal darkness of the deep ocean. Each pulse of light revealed new details of its intricate structure, thousands of individual zooids working together in perfect harmony to create one of nature's most remarkable collaborative achievements. To call a siphonophore a single animal is both accurate and misleading. In reality, these creatures represent one of evolution's most successful experiments in cooperative living. Each siphonophore colony consists of thousands of individual zooids, specialized organisms that have evolved to perform specific functions within the larger whole. Some zooids are responsible for locomotion, using coordinated swimming motions to propel the entire colony through the water. Others specialize in feeding, extending long tentacles armed with stinging cells to capture prey. Still others handle reproduction, ensuring the continuation of the colony's genetic line. The giant specimen discovered off Western Australia represented this cooperative strategy, taken to an almost unimaginable extreme. The creature's massive size meant that it contained potentially hundreds of thousands of individual zooids, each one perfectly specialized for its role within the greater organism. The coordination required to maintain such a vast colonial structure challenges our understanding of how nervous systems and communication networks can operate on such a scale. The feeding strategy employed by this colossal siphonophore was as impressive as its size. The creature's tentacles, some extending dozens of feet from the main body, were armed with millions of stinging cells called nematocysts. When small fish, crustaceans, or other prey animals came into contact with these tentacles, they were instantly paralyzed by neurotoxins and drawn toward feeding zooids that would digest them and distribute the nutrients throughout the entire colony. What made the feeding process particularly remarkable was the level of coordination involved. The giant siphonophore could simultaneously deploy hundreds of tentacles, creating a living net that stretched across vast volumes of water. When prey was captured in one part of this net, chemical signals would communicate the information to other parts of the colony, allowing the entire organism to adjust its behavior and positioning to maximize feeding efficiency. The bioluminescent displays produced by the giant siphonophore served multiple purposes beyond simple beauty. The patterns of light that pulsed along its length were actually sophisticated communication systems, allowing different parts of the colony to coordinate their activities across the creature's enormous length. These light signals could indicate the presence of prey, warn of potential threats, or coordinate the complex swimming motions required to move such a massive organism through the water. The discovery of this giant siphonophore in the Ningaloo Canyons highlighted the incredible biodiversity that exists in Australia's deep-water marine environments. The region is known for its unique geological features and complex current systems that create ideal conditions for filter-feeding organisms like siphonophores. The canyons provide nutrients and shelter that support entire ecosystems of creatures found nowhere else on Earth. The size of the Western Australian siphonophore raised fascinating questions about the upper limits of biological size and complexity. Traditional theories about maximum organism size are based on the challenges of maintaining cellular communication and nutrient distribution across large distances. Yet here was a creature that seemed to have solved these problems through its colonial structure, allowing it to achieve sizes that would be impossible for conventional multicellular organisms. The fluid grace with which the giant siphonophore moved through the water defied explanation based on conventional understanding of aquatic locomotion. Despite its enormous size, the creature was capable of remarkably agile movements, able to change direction, adjust its depth, and modify its shape in response to environmental conditions. This agility suggested that the coordination between its thousands of component zooids was so sophisticated that the entire colony could respond to stimuli as quickly as a much smaller, simpler organism. The reproductive strategies of giant siphonophores remain largely mysterious, as does almost every aspect of their life cycle beyond basic feeding and locomotion. Scientists believe that these creatures may have incredibly long lifespans, potentially living for decades as they slowly grow by adding new zooids to their colonial structure. The process by which new colonies are formed likely involves the release of specialized reproductive zooids that can establish new colonies, but the details of this process have never been directly observed. The discovery of the giant siphonophore also provided insights into the evolution of colonial organisms and the advantages that cooperative living can provide in challenging environments. The deep ocean is a place where food is scarce, predators are dangerous, and the physical environment is hostile to most forms of life. By working together, the thousands of zooids that make up a siphonophore colony can achieve things that would be impossible for any individual organism. The Western Australian discovery sparked renewed interest in searching for other giant siphonophores in oceans around the world. Advanced sonar systems and high-definition underwater cameras are revealing that these remarkable creatures may be more common than previously thought. Existing in the deep waters of all the world's oceans, but remaining largely undetected due to their fragile nature and preference for depths that are difficult for humans to explore. The fragility of siphonophores presents unique challenges for scientists attempting to study them. These creatures are so delicate that even gentle contact with research equipment can damage them irreparably. Their gelatinous bodies are perfectly adapted to the stable conditions of the deep ocean, but they cannot survive the pressure changes and turbulence associated with being brought to the surface for detailed study. The study of giant siphonophores has implications that extend far beyond marine biology. These creatures represent one of nature's most successful examples of distributed intelligence and cooperative behavior, principles that are increasingly important in fields ranging from robotics to computer science. Understanding how thousands of simple units can work together to create complex, intelligent behavior could lead to advances in artificial intelligence and autonomous systems. The giant siphonophore of Western Australia serves as a powerful reminder that our planet's oceans still hold wonders that can challenge our most basic assumptions about life itself. This creature represents a form of existence that is so fundamentally different from our own that encountering it feels like making contact with an alien intelligence. Yet it has been sharing our planet for millions of years, growing and thriving in the darkness of the deep ocean while we remained completely unaware of its existence. The ethereal beauty of the giant siphonophore, its graceful spirals, its pulsing bioluminescence, its fluid movements through the dark water, creates an image that stays with anyone who witnesses it. This is not just a large animal, it is a living artwork created by evolution, a masterpiece of biological cooperation that demonstrates the incredible creativity and ingenuity of life on Earth. The discovery of this record-breaking creature has also raised important questions about conservation and the protection of deep-sea ecosystems. Like many deep-sea organisms, siphonophores are likely vulnerable to the effects of climate change, pollution, and deep-sea fishing activities. Their slow growth rates and specialized habitat requirements make them particularly susceptible to environmental disturbances. The giant siphonophore's home in the Ningaloo Canyons represents just one example of the unique deep-sea habitats that exist around the world's continental margins. These underwater canyons create upwelling currents that bring nutrients from the deep ocean to shallower waters, supporting diverse ecosystems that include not only giant siphonophores, but also deep-sea corals, bizarre fish species, and countless other organisms found nowhere else on Earth. The coordination mechanisms that allow hundreds of thousands of individual zooids to function as a single organism continue to fascinate researchers studying collective behavior in biological systems. The giant siphonophore essentially represents a natural experiment in distributed computing where thousands of simple processing units work together to create complex behaviors and responses that emerge from their collective interactions. As technology continues to advance and deep-sea exploration becomes more sophisticated, scientists hope to learn more about the behavior and ecology of giant siphonophores in their natural environment. New techniques that allow for extended observation at depth without disturbing these fragile creatures are revealing aspects of their biology that were previously unknown. The story of the giant siphonophore also reminds us of the importance of continued ocean exploration and the need to protect marine environments that we're only beginning to understand. Each new expedition to the deep sea reveals creatures and ecosystems that challenge our understanding of life on Earth, yet vast areas of the ocean remain completely unexplored. As we drift away from the spiraling galaxy of the giant siphonophore, carrying with us the image of its bioluminescent beauty and the humbling reminder of how much we still don't know about life in our oceans, we approach the final story in our deep-sea sleep stories, a tale that brings us full circle to the surface world and reminds us that the greatest mysteries often lie not in the deepest trenches, but in the intersection between human ambition and the ocean's eternal indifference to our plans and dreams. Story 22. The Ship That Swallowed Men. As our journey through the ocean's deepest mysteries draws to a close, we surface from the alien realms of the abyss to find ourselves in the more familiar waters of the surface world, where sailing ships once carried cargo and dreams across the vast expanses of the Atlantic Ocean. Yet even here, in the supposedly known and charted waters of the 19th century, the sea held secrets that would challenge every assumption about what was possible in the rational, predictable world of maritime commerce. This final tale takes us back to 1881, to an encounter so strange and inexplicable that it has become one of the most enduring mysteries in maritime history. It is the story of the schooner Ellen Austin and her encounter with a ghost ship that seemed to possess an appetite for human souls, a vessel so cursed or haunted that it would claim crew after crew, leaving behind only empty decks and unanswered questions that echo across the decades, like the sound of wind through abandoned rigging. The Ellen Austin was a substantial schooner of her time, a working vessel built for the practical business of carrying cargo across the Atlantic trade routes that connected America with the rest of the world. In 1881, she was making a routine voyage from London to New York, loaded with goods destined for American markets and crewed by experienced sailors who had made this crossing countless times before. Captain Baker, her master, was a seasoned mariner with decades of experience reading the moods of the Atlantic and the countless dangers that could arise during an ocean crossing. It was during this routine voyage, somewhere in the waters of the North Atlantic, that would later become infamous as part of the Bermuda Triangle, that the Ellen Austin encountered something that would challenge every assumption about what was normal and natural in the maritime world. Rising out of the morning mist like a specter from another era was a large sailing vessel, fully rigged and apparently seaworthy, but showing no signs of life aboard. The derelict ship appeared to be in excellent condition despite the complete absence of any crew. Her sails were properly set, her rigging was intact, and her hull showed no signs of damage that would explain why she had been abandoned. Most mysteriously of all, the ship seemed to be sailing under control, maintaining a steady course despite having no one at the helm. It was as if the vessel had learned to sail herself, continuing her voyage with phantom hands managing her sheets and phantom eyes watching her course. Captain Baker, being a practical man of the sea, saw opportunity where others might have seen only mystery. Derelict vessels represented potential salvage prizes for those bold enough to claim them, and a ship in such good condition could be worth a substantial sum if successfully brought to port. After observing the mystery vessel for several hours to ensure that she was truly abandoned, Baker made the decision to board her and attempt to determine her identity and the fate of her missing crew. The boarding party that rowed across to the derelict ship found her to be even more mysterious upon close inspection. The vessel was indeed in excellent condition, with well-maintained rigging, a clean deck, and cargo holds that contained valuable goods. Her papers identified her as a merchant vessel, but they provided no clue about what had happened to her crew or why they had abandoned such a seaworthy ship. Most puzzling of all, there were no signs of violence, illness, or any other obvious cause for the crew's departure. The ship's logbooks told a story that was maddeningly incomplete. The entries proceeded normally for days, recording routine navigation information, weather observations, and the mundane details of life aboard a merchant vessel. Then, abruptly, the entry stopped, with no explanation for the sudden silence. It was as if the crew had simply vanished in the middle of their duties, leaving behind no clue about their fate or their destination. Captain Baker, faced with the prospect of a valuable salvage prize, made a decision that he would later have cause to regret. He assigned a crew of his best men to sail the derelict vessel, with orders to follow the Ellen Austin to New York, where both ships could be brought to port and the legal complexities of salvage could be sorted out. It seemed like a straightforward arrangement, the kind of practical solution that experienced mariners had been using for centuries to deal with abandoned vessels. The salvage crew that boarded the mystery ship consisted of some of Captain Baker's most reliable men, sailors who had served with him for years and who were experienced in handling unfamiliar vessels. They were given supplies, charts, and instructions for the voyage to New York, and they seemed confident in their ability to sail the derelict safely to port. As the two ships set sail together, with the Ellen Austin leading and the mystery vessel following, everything appeared to be proceeding according to plan. For the first day of this unusual convoy, the arrangement worked exactly as Captain Baker had intended. The two ships maintained contact, sailing within sight of each other through fair weather and calm seas. The salvage crew aboard the derelict seemed to be managing their vessel competently, and there was every reason to believe that both ships would reach New York without incident. But the Atlantic Ocean had other plans for this strange partnership. During the night, a storm arose with the sudden violence that characterizes North Atlantic weather. Heavy seas and driving winds separated the two vessels, and when dawn broke and the weather cleared, Captain Baker found himself staring at empty ocean. The mystery ship had vanished as completely as if she had never existed, taking with her the crew of experienced sailors who had been confident in their ability to handle any maritime challenge. The search that followed was thorough and desperate. Captain Baker altered course to cover every possible direction the missing vessel might have taken, scanning the horizon for any sign of sails or wreckage. He questioned passing ships about unusual sightings, and he maintained a constant watch for any trace of the missing vessel or her crew. But the ocean had swallowed the mystery ship as completely as it had apparently swallowed her original crew, leaving behind no evidence of her fate. Days passed without any sign of the missing vessel, and Captain Baker was faced with the grim reality that he had lost some of his best men to whatever force had originally claimed the derelict's crew. The practical considerations of his voyage demanded that he continue toward New York, but the mystery of the vanished ship haunted him and his remaining crew as they sailed through waters that had suddenly become much more ominous and threatening. Then, in a twist that defied all probability and logic, the mystery ship reappeared. Rising out of the morning mist exactly as she had during the first encounter, the derelict vessel came into view of the Ellen Austin, once again sailing under control, despite the complete absence of any visible crew. The ship appeared to be in the same excellent condition as before, showing no signs of storm damage or any other indication of what had happened during her disappearance. Captain Baker, faced with this impossible situation, made a decision that demonstrated either remarkable courage or dangerous obsession. Despite the obvious supernatural implications of the ship's reappearance, he decided to attempt the salvage operation once more. This time, however, he assigned a different crew to the mystery vessel, perhaps hoping that fresh men might succeed where his first salvage crew had failed. The second boarding party found the derelict ship to be exactly as it had been during the first encounter, empty, clean, and showing no trace of what had happened to either her original crew or the salvage party that had vanished with her. The ship's condition was so pristine that it seemed as if the vessel had been magically restored to her original state, with no evidence of the men who had lived and worked aboard her during her brief period under human control. The second salvage crew, perhaps more nervous than their predecessors about the ship's reputation but motivated by the substantial financial rewards of a successful salvage, took control of the vessel and prepared to attempt the voyage to New York once more. Captain Baker, having learned from his previous experience, made arrangements to maintain closer contact with the derelict and to avoid separation during any future storms. But the ocean's appetite for the mystery ship's crews proved to be insatiable. Despite Captain Baker's precautions and the vigilance of both crews, the derelict vessel vanished again, this time taking with her the second group of men who had dared to sail her. Unlike the first disappearance, which had occurred during a storm that provided a plausible explanation for the separation, this second vanishing happened during clear weather, when both ships were in sight of each other. The final disappearance of the mystery ship was witnessed by the crew of the Ellen Austin, who watched in horror as the derelict simply faded from view like a mirage dissolving in the afternoon heat. One moment she was there, sailing alongside them with her crew visible on deck, and the next moment she was gone, leaving behind only empty ocean, and the terrible certainty that something beyond human understanding was at work. Captain Baker, having lost 2 crews to the cursed vessel, made the painful decision to abandon any further attempts at salvage. The Ellen Austin continued her voyage to New York, carrying with her the traumatic memory of encounters that challenged everything her crew believed about the natural world. The mystery ship was never seen again, at least not by any witnesses who survived to tell the tale. The story of the Ellen Austin and her encounters with the ghost ship has become one of the most enduring mysteries in maritime folklore, a tale that speaks to our deepest fears about the unknown forces that might exist in the vast emptiness of the ocean. The complete disappearance of 2 experienced crews, without any trace or explanation, defies rational analysis and suggests that some mysteries are simply beyond human understanding. The mystery ship of the Ellen Austin represents something more than just another unexplained maritime incident. It embodies our oldest fears about the sea and its capacity to reclaim what we think we have conquered. In an age when human technology and knowledge seem to be mastering the natural world, this encounter served as a humbling reminder that the ocean still held powers that could not be categorized, predicted, or controlled. As we conclude our journey through the ocean's deepest mysteries, the tale of the Ellen Austin serves as a perfect reminder that the sea keeps its secrets in many different ways. Some mysteries lie in the crushing depths, where pressure and darkness create alien worlds, while others exist on the familiar surface where ships sail and men work. yet where the impossible can still intrude into the ordered world of human activity. The ghost ship that claimed crew after crew before vanishing forever into the mists of legend reminds us that for all our scientific understanding and technological advancement, the ocean remains a realm where mystery and wonder can still flourish. Whether the disappearances were caused by natural phenomena we don't yet understand, by human actions we can't explain, or by forces beyond the realm of scientific inquiry, the story of the Ellen Austin stands as testament to the sea's eternal capacity to humble human ambition. The Ellen Austin herself continued sailing for many years after her encounters with the mystery vessel, but her crew would never forget the sight of that ghost ship appearing and disappearing like a fever dream on the Atlantic swells. The story became part of maritime folklore, told and retold in ports around the world as a cautionary tale about the dangers of disturbing things that the sea has claimed for its own. Maritime historians have attempted to find rational explanations for the Ellen Austin incident, proposing theories ranging from deliberately falsified records to elaborate insurance fraud schemes. Some suggest that the mystery ship might have been a Q ship, a vessel used for covert military or intelligence operations, whose crew had specific orders to eliminate any witnesses to their activities. Others propose that the derelict might have been contaminated with disease or poison gas that killed anyone who boarded her. Yet none of these rational explanations can fully account for the specific details of the encounters, the pristine condition of the abandoned vessel, her apparent ability to sail herself, and most mysteriously, her capacity to vanish completely from sight, even when being directly observed. The story possesses elements that seem to exist outside the realm of normal maritime experience, suggesting that whatever happened in those Atlantic waters in 1881 may have been genuinely supernatural in nature. The tale of the Ellen Austin has become inextricably linked with the legend of the Bermuda Triangle, that supposedly mysterious area of the Atlantic where ships and aircraft are said to disappear under unusual circumstances. While skeptics point out that the triangle has no higher rate of disappearances than any other heavily traveled area of ocean, stories like the Ellen Austin incident continue to fuel speculation about supernatural forces operating in these waters. The psychological impact of the Ellen Austin encounters extended far beyond the immediate participants. Word of the mysterious disappearances spread through the close-knit maritime community, where sailors are naturally superstitious and quick to share stories of unusual events at sea. The tale became a ghost story that was told in forecastles and taverns around the world, adding to the rich folklore of supernatural encounters that has always been part of maritime culture. Perhaps most disturbing of all is the complete absence of any trace of the men who vanished aboard the mystery ship. In an age before radio communication, it was not unusual for ships to disappear without explanation, but the specific circumstances of these disappearances, experienced sailors vanishing from a seaworthy vessel under direct observation, created a mystery that defied every conventional explanation for maritime casualties. The Ellen Austin incident also highlights the risks that sailors of the 19th century accepted as routine parts of their profession. The decision to board an unknown vessel and sail her across dangerous waters was considered a normal business practice, despite the obvious dangers involved. The men who volunteered for these salvage operations knew they were taking significant risks, but they also knew that successful salvage could provide substantial financial rewards. The story has inspired countless retellings, investigations, and fictional adaptations over the years, each attempting to provide explanations for the inexplicable events. Maritime mystery enthusiasts have combed through shipping records, naval archives, and newspaper accounts from the period, searching for additional evidence that might shed light on what really happened during those encounters in the Atlantic. Yet for all the investigation and speculation, the mystery of the Ellen Austin remains unsolved. The ghost ship that appeared from nowhere, claimed 2 crews, and then vanished forever into maritime legend represents one of those rare cases where the questions may be more important than the answers. The story forces us to confront the possibility that some events may exist beyond the reach of rational explanation. The Ellen Austin encounter serves as a perfect conclusion to our exploration of the ocean's mysteries because it reminds us that the sea's capacity for wonder and terror extends beyond the exotic creatures of the deep and the alien landscapes of the abyss. Even on the familiar surface waters where humans have sailed for thousands of years, the ocean can still produce encounters that challenge our understanding of what is possible in the natural world. As we drift away from the final mystery of our deep-sea sleep stories, carrying with us the image of that phantom vessel appearing and disappearing in the Atlantic mist, we're reminded that the ocean will always be larger than our ability to comprehend it. No matter how much we learn about marine biology, oceanography, or the physics of the deep sea, there will always be stories like that of the Ellen Austen, tales that speak to something beyond scientific understanding and remind us that mystery and wonder are eternal parts of the human experience. The sea keeps its secrets in countless ways, from the crushing depths where alien creatures evolve in eternal darkness to the surface waters where ghost ships can appear and vanish like dreams. Our journey through these mysteries has taken us from the microscopic to the massive, from the ancient to the modern, from the explainable to the utterly inexplicable. Each story has been a reminder that our planet is still full of wonders that can humble our knowledge and fire our imagination. As you drift off to sleep, perhaps you'll dream of spiraling through the depths like a ram's horn squid, or floating through bioluminescent gardens in the company of translucent deep-sea angels. Maybe you'll find yourself aboard the Ellen Austen, watching a ghost ship materialize from the mist, or standing on the deck of the Endurance as she fights her final battle with the crushing ice. These ocean mysteries continue to unfold in the depths below, where new discoveries await the next generation of explorers brave enough to venture into the alien realm that covers most of our planet. The sea that has given us these stories continues to hide countless others, waiting in the darkness for the right moment to reveal new wonders to those who dare to search for them. Sleep well, fellow explorers of the deep. The ocean's mysteries will be waiting when you wake, as eternal and fascinating as the tides themselves.